Yeah, welcome in to the Tuesday edition. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby Stanley, Adam Vingan in for Joe again this morning. Nick Keyser here with you on this Tuesday morning. Joseph on vacation the rest of the week. Adam, how we doing? What's going on?
I'm good. What a whirlwind day of NHL free agency yesterday.
It was pretty wild. Pretty wild, especially around here. We got a lot to get into today on the program. Keyser, how we doing? What's going on?
Good morning. Doing well. Got the stream going this morning, so
That's good.
the beautiful faces of Nashville can be seen this morning on a new version.
That's what we are. When you think Nashville and beautiful faces,
Faces for radio.
That's what you think.
I think you got the wrong guys. Speaking for myself. If Robby thinks he's beautiful, who am I to judge?
I mean, we had somebody text in a couple weeks ago, call us the Fat and Bald Show. So be better than that. Who knows? Take your thoughts all show long on our phone and text lines, which are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. 615-737-1025, our phone number. 615-737-1025.
Oh, man.
That really got a direct path to your funny bone, didn't it? The Fat and Bald Show.
It's not nice, but it is pretty funny.
Hey, it's the Fat and Bald Show with Robby Stanley and Joe Rexrode.
Oh, man.
Good to be here.
Oh, man. Anyway, speaking of good to be here, Steven Stamkos,
Ooh.
Jonathan Marchessault, Brady Shea, Alex Carrier re-signed, UC Soros re-signed, Scott Wedgwood in the house.
Yes.
Like
Don't forget Scott Wedgwood.
150. Oh, it's 111.5. Just the free agents, the newcomers, the four newcomers. $111.5 million in commitment.
That's pretty big day
Yes.
for the Nashville Predators. I called it yesterday a monumental day for the franchise, really, regardless of how it turns out. Like yesterday, they have never really even approached doing anything in free agency like they did yesterday. And we talked about the Stamkos part of it. And, there are people that were arguing about whether or not he would be the biggest signing in franchise history or would it be Paul Kariya. And that's fine. We can have that debate. One debate that we can't have, there is no doubt that yesterday was by far the most consequential day that they have ever had in free agency. And it's a franchise changing day from the standpoint of you've got now a future first ballot Hall of Famer on your team. You have a Conn Smythe winner, another one on your team. You've added a defenseman, who, by the way, got a 7-year contract at $49 million. It's just, we could talk about, Carrier coming back. They officially announced the Soros stuff yesterday, and then Wedgwood coming in. But those three, Stamkos, Marchessault, Shea, just massive moves for the Nashville Predators. And, we were talking about this at about 8:30 yesterday, and I said, well, they got the room to go get Stamkos and Marchessault. What would you think about that? And I was about 75% joking when I said that. And it turns out Barry Trotz was not joking when he was talking about potentially going to add Stamkos and Marchessault. This was a huge day for them yesterday. Stamkos coming in 4 years, $32 million, an $8 million cap hit every year. Brady Shea, we just talked about 7 years, $7 million per season. Jonathan Marchessault, 5 years, $5.5 million per season. They got Wedgwood in as the backup goalie, 2 years, $1.5 million. Let's just start with kind of right off the hop. Stamkos, we had talked about now for a few days. The more and more likely that it looked that he was going to get away from Tampa Bay, the more you started to wonder, could the Predators actually pull it off? They did it. So when free agency was just about to start yesterday, I felt pretty good about the Predators getting in there on Stamkos. I mean, from Elliot Friedman to Pierre LeBrun and everybody, connected in the insider world kept connecting the dots between the Predators and Steven Stamkos. And then basically out of nowhere, about an hour before free agency began, you started to hear about Marchessault. And, we were on the show yesterday, Adam, and it looked like he might be going to New Jersey. And then momentum switched, and he was going to the Predators. So by the time 11 o'clock rolled around, it felt all but certain that the Predators were getting Stamkos, Marchessault, and Shea And about 20 minutes in free agency, they had all three of them. It was wild.
I was watching TSN's free agent frenzy show yesterday, shortly after the market opened, and they put a graphic up of their top 5 free agents on their big board. And 3 of the 5 had Predators logos next to their names. And it was quite the screenshot because, as we talked about yesterday, and as Predators fans know, the Predators have never been big players in free agency. They've never been considered a popular destination in free agency. And they just wrangled 3 of the 5 biggest names on the free agent market. James Duthie, the host of Free Agent Frenzy on TSN, wondered rather, if it was the only time in that show's history that the top 3 of the top 5 free agents went to the same place. And I think it was an open-ended question. I'm not sure anybody actually had an answer. He was just wondering aloud if it was the first time that 3 of TSN's top 5 free agents went to the same team. And as I said, when you look at the 4 players they brought in yesterday, including Wedgwood, who's a really solid backup goalie, it's gonna be lost in the Stamkos and Shea and Marchessault of it all. But Scott Wedgwood is a really solid backup goalie. They committed $111.5 million to 4 new players. They had all of this cap space, and they used it. And that's, if you're a Predators fan today, I don't know how you can't be excited. Now, you can have some reservations about the contracts and how they'll age and all of that, and we'll get into plenty of that over the next 3 hours. But just the fact that, as you said, Steven Stamkos, one of the greatest goal scorers of his generation, a 2-time Stanley Cup champion, wanted to come to Nashville. Jonathan Marchessault, a recent Conn Smythe Trophy winner, someone who spent 8 years, 7 years in Vegas, was one of the original members of the Vegas Golden Knights, played a significant role in hockey becoming what it did in Las Vegas, came to Nashville. The fact that Brady Shea, with Brady Shea, look, if you're getting 7x7, who are you to argue, right?
Yeah.
But Brady Shea, a top 4 defenseman, came to Nashville. As we said yesterday, prior to this free agency, the biggest free agent signing in Predators history was Paul Kariya, and that was at the outset of the salary cap era. It was a much different time.
Yeah.
In terms of actual contract, the biggest free agent signing in Predators history was Matt Duchene prior to yesterday, and Steven Stamkos got the same amount of money per year as Matt Duchene, $8 million.
Yeah.
Like, that's the history that the Predators have in free agency. It's not an illustrious history. So for them to get all 3 of those players, I mean, it's clear what Barry Trotz thinks about where this group is going. I mean, I don't know if is it fair to say, this is something we always throw out, so maybe it's overused. I get it. Are we talking cup or bust now with this team? Because of the ages of the players they acquired, there's a relatively small window to win with them being effective players.
Yeah, like I think you're probably, Barry Trotz would not say yes to that, because I think his response would be, well, we still have a lot of the young guys that we're trying to develop. They didn't give up significant draft capital to get all these players. They still have a lot of draft picks coming up. So I think coming behind these guys. Now, we don't know exactly what that wave is and how good or not good it's going to be. But my answer to that is yes. Like, it doesn't – I'm not talking about this season specifically, but I think they're in a 3-year window. That was my takeaway yesterday of, okay, I know, Marchessault signs for 5, Stamkos is 4. With their ages, with the UC Saros contract, and then when you factor in Roman Josi and Philip Forsberg, I think they're in about a 3-year window to win a championship. That's what it is. And you can debate whether or not that's the right path to go, but that's what they're in right now. Like, you don't go out and sign Stamkos and Marchessault and commit that money to Shea if you're not really trying to put your foot on the doorstep of winning a championship here. And we'll see whether or not it works. But like you said, we've had plenty of debates over the last 2-3 years about the right path for the Predators. And I don't know that this is the right one, but it's the fun one. I know that. It's going to be fun. And if you're a Predators fan, you have to be, I think, really gassed up today with the way that things went down yesterday. Really, I mean, you have to be gassed up if you're a Predators fan from the simple fact that Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault now play for your team. Like you're talking about 240 goal scorers that joined your roster yesterday on a team that in the history of their franchise has had 240 goal scorers in 25 years. That's pretty wild yesterday that happened in one day.
Well, I think this exemplifies what, the importance of bringing in Stamkos and Marchessault specifically. The Predators lost a 6-game playoff series a few months ago, despite allowing only 13 goals in 6 games.
Yeah.
The problem was they only scored 12. If you have Stamkos and Marchessault on your team, you're probably winning that series if everything else breaks the way it did, because you have two players who scored a combined 82 goals last season. So this team needed an infusion of offense. They needed proven scorers. And to your point about the experience, the Predators now have 4 players who have won the Stanley Cup at least once since 2019. Stamkos and Marchessault, Luke Schenn and Ryan O'Reilly. They also now have 2 Conn Smythe Trophy winners over that span, in O'Reilly and Marchessault. So it checks off the serial winners box. They lost McDonough. They bring in Stamkos. By the way, Ryan McDonough wants to go back to Tampa, wants to put the band back together. Oops.
See ya.
By Steven Stamkos. And it's partially McDonough's fault, probably. Not that partially, just from the cap hit of it all.
Right.
Yeah, Tampa's in an interesting spot. I mean, do you get better with McDonough and Gensel versus Stamkos and Sergachev?
I don't know the answer to that.
I'm not sure of the answer to that either. That's something for the Tampa Bay Lightning to figure out. But you have an infusion of goal scoring now that, as you said, Robby, to put it in historical context, that this team rarely has had, and that's really exciting if you're a Predators fan. So, yesterday, as you said, was a monumental day in franchise history, and you have to respect the big ones on Barry, because in his second full year as a general manager, he's proven he's not messing around.
He's not.
He's willing to make the hard and the hard decisions, the big decisions. And if you are a fan with a team with a general manager who's willing to do that, I mean, that's in a good spot. So I feel like the Predators, won the day yesterday. And it's easy to say, right? Because free agency, winners, losers, we won't know what happens until this time next year when the games are played and the Stanley Cup has been handed out. But it feels like the Predators were slam dunk winners yesterday in free agency.
A historic day for the Nashville Predators. Steven Stamkos, a Nashville Predator, along with Jonathan Marchessault and Brady Shea. Scott Wedgwood added to the mix yesterday as well. They re-signed Alex Carrier. Big day for the Nashville Predators. We'll take your thoughts on all of it. Our text line is down, so we need your phone calls today. 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Your phone calls on our phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game.
as Barry will call them, serial winners. You can't have enough of them. And I think organizationally, culturally, that is imperative. And I've seen it firsthand with our group from watching how they mesh with Ryan O'Reilly and these guys, and watching them grow as not just hockey players, but leaders. I mean, we're getting lucky here. Obviously we got a great first tier, we got a secondary tier, and some of our young guys are learning and they're falling that third tier. So you can't have enough of them, I think, as an organization. And we're blessed, and you get Stamkos and Marchessault that come in that have won. Brady Shea's been an outstanding team his whole career. So to have those guys come in, we're just going to, our young guys are sponges off them. And again, back to the identity and who we are, I think they'll come in and fit in real good.
That was Andrew Burnett, head coach of the Nashville Predators, on with Stillman and company yesterday. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode. Robbie Stanley, Adam Vingan, Nick Keyser here with you. This is your show today. We want your reaction. Big day for the Nashville Predators. Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, Brady Shea, the big moves made by the Predators yesterday. Our text line is down, so we're going to need your phone calls throughout the show. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Let's go to our 1025 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in Bob in Antioch. Bob, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Good morning, guys. One of the most exciting things about all this to me is the fact that they've made all these additions to the team and haven't given up any draft picks or prospects. So it seems like they've got the best of both worlds. So what's your opinion of the fact that they've still got a full farm system and all the draft picks?
Yep. Thanks for the call, Bob. I think that's a really good piece of business by Barry Trotz, the way that this is kind of all going down here. Now, let me put the caveat in there. I don't think he's done. I think there's going to be another move or two this offseason. I mean, he said it yesterday that he's looking to move somebody out. Now, he didn't get into specifics as to who that would be, but he's going to, I think, move somebody out and probably try to create a little bit more cap flexibility heading into the year. I think, Adam, the fact that they haven't really touched their farm system through all this or their draft picks is good from a twofold standpoint. Number one, you have your draft picks and your farm system that you can still develop, that you can still rely on to continue to give you some depth organizationally, that I think is really good. And then the other part of it is, over the next 2 years here, when you're trying to make a push for a Stanley Cup, if you need to make a trade to bolster your team, you still have assets to try and go do that. Like that's probably, if I'm a Predators fan, what I'm most excited about is, it's great to have all the young guys, and hopefully some of those guys continue to pop here, but you also have assets that you can go add with if you're Barry Trotz, which I think he will try to do if they're going to be in contention.
And there isn't a can't miss prospect in the American League right now for the Predators. You hope that someone there can come up and have an impact. And we've talked a lot about the Dallas Stars model and Wyatt Johnston and Logan Stankoven and players like that who are in their early 20s, who are key contributors to that team's success. The Predators, unless I'm obviously missing somebody, don't have that player yet. You hope that one of the players in the American League can become that, but they don't have that player yet. So if these moves yesterday allow the Predators to give those younger players more time, as Barry says he likes to overcook the prospects, not microwave the prospects, I think is what he said, something to that effect. You're not rushing anybody into the NHL, because if that's what the Predators wanted to do, they would be taking a much different route. They'd probably be in the maybe not as bad as Chicago and San Jose, but not far off if that's what they were planning on doing. And as you said off the top, Robbie, and I did as well, I think that this, although they signed Stamkos to a 4-year deal, Marchessault to a 5-year deal, and Shea to a 7-year deal, I think you're looking at a 2 to 3 year window here to win a championship. And I thought something that Vegas GM Kelly McCrimmon said yesterday was really interesting. After their free agency was done, McCrimmon sat down and detailed the, some of the behind the scenes stuff, which led to Jonathan Marchessault leaving the Golden Knights. And McCrimmon said that it was around the beginning of the NHL draft that Marchessault's camp requested a 5-year term.
Yeah.
And McCrimmon, paraphrasing here, said, "We were not comfortable doing that. The data supports that wasn't a good idea." And that is some of the risk that's baked into Marchessault's contract and Stamkos' contract and Shea's contract. It's all there. I mean, that's what happens in free agency. You're signing older players to long-term deals.
Yeah.
That risk is going to be there.
Well, and look, I'll be honest with you. When I saw the Shea deal yesterday, and I said, "Ooh, 7 years. That's a long time for Brady Shea." I saw the Marchessault deal, and I said, "Ooh, 5 years. That's a long time for Jonathan Marchessault at this stage of his career." But like, honestly, it doesn't really matter. Like when you really think about it, if those guys don't win a championship in the next like 3-4 years, Preds are probably gonna be pretty bad after that.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter. Like yesterday to me was a signal of they are all in for the next few years here, and that's what it is. They're all in, and they're either going to win, or we're probably right back into a rebuild, changing regime conversation right after that. Like, in some ways, this is like Barry Trotz kind of tying himself to the next 3 years here, I think. So it's a really bold move by Barry Trotz. We're going to get more specifically into him here in a few minutes, but it's another example of cap space in this league can go quickly, right? They had $26 million in projected space heading into yesterday. They're over the cap right now.
And you're
They're
allowed
over
to be
the cap by $179,000.
You're allowed to be over the cap during the offseason.
Yeah.
I think up to 10%, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And another part, actually, to the credit of Stamkos and Marchessault, I talked about the risk in their contracts. One thing I really liked yesterday, and Jared touched on this as well, Stamkos and Marchessault were not shy about the fact that they felt like their old teams moved on from them.
That is music to my ears
Yes.
if I'm a Predators fan.
Stamkos had this line that I read about how sometimes, what was it, like
Sometimes you're holding on to things that don't want to hold on to you.
I read that and I
said.
thought, damn, like, and Marchessault in his interview on TSN was not shy about the fact that he felt like, he put his best foot forward and the Golden Knights were not receptive. So you're getting two highly motivated players in addition to just two good players.
Yeah.
These players felt like their old teams, for lack of a better term, gave up on them.
Yeah, they feel jilted. There's no doubt about it.
And that's a powerful motivator.
No doubt about it. Let's go to our 1025 The Game phone line. Welcome in Ryan in Mount Juliet. Ryan, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Morning, guys. Other than all the signings yesterday that went down that really boosted the team, honestly, I've got to give applause to Trotz because, let's face it, David Poyle would never have done anything like Trotz did yesterday with all the moves that he made. He might have made maybe one, maybe two, but he wouldn't have gone out and got Stamkos, Marchessault, Shea, Wedgwood, and then when everyone thought he was done, about 5 o'clock yesterday, make 4 more signings just to top it off. Just to be, hey, I'm the big dog now. And also with all these signings, and I know Trotz said he want to move a couple people out, you think that they're out on Natchez now, or do you think maybe the Natchez is still the plan?
Yep, thanks for the call, Ryan. I mean, right now they don't have cap space for Marty Natchez.
I don't think they could fit him in.
They couldn't do it.
I think
it would depend on who they'd move out. I mean, yeah, tell me who they're going to move out, and then I can tell you whether or not they can get in the Marty Natchez race. But I mean, they're not moving out somebody with a big cap hit. I don't think.
I think this is your team, Predators fans, entering the season. There
More or
might be a
less.
subtraction.
Yeah.
Maybe it's Dante Fabro. Maybe it's Cody Glass.
Yeah.
Someone who has a relatively small cap hit to give them some wiggle room under the cap.
Right.
But the team that Barry Trotz assembled yesterday, I think, is the team that is going to take the ice on opening night. And by the way, I don't know if this is their season opener, but the NHL announced home openers yesterday. October 10th versus the Dallas Stars is the Predators' home opener. The entire schedule will be released later today, but the Predators will open their home schedule October 10th against the Dallas Stars.
Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, Brady Shea, Nashville Predators. Your thoughts all show long. Give us a phone call. Text line is down today. Phone call, YouTube chat, 615-737-1025 is our phone number. More of your thoughts on the big day for the Predators coming up next. What does this tell us about Barry Trotz as a general manager? We'll get into that. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game.
And it's interesting, if you think about July 1st a year ago, Barry Trotz in his first year as GM started the work on his team in terms of changing the culture. Luke Shen, Ryan O'Reilly, culture sending messages for his team. A year later, he adds a bunch of offense with more character. Steven Stamkos, longtime captain of the Lightning. Barry Trotz made him his #1 target. Wasn't quite sure he'd be available until about Thursday or Friday when talks broke off with Tampa. And then he pursues Jonathan Marchessault, so just in case he can't get Stamkos, gets them both, replaces McDonough with Brady Shea. Unbelievable day for Nashville Predators.
That's Pierre LeBrun yesterday discussing the day for the Nashville Predators. Taking your thoughts on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. 615-737-1025, our phone number, 615-737-1025. A historic day for the Nashville Predators. Let's go to our phone line. Welcome in Mike in Gallatin. Mike, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, guys. Good morning. Yeah, when we were listening to the coverage on Willie's show yesterday, just all the news breaking and whatnot, man, I was just in complete distraught. Like, I didn't honestly think that, like, that would happen for us to get both of those players. Well, I mean, all three if you count Shea as well. But both Stamkos and Marchessault, I was hoping that it'd be cool if we could just get one of those. I mean, when we got both, I was on cloud 9. I know that, like, if this doesn't pan out for a Stanley Cup, it could all be for naught because we have some long terms there. It's the only, like, little thing. But that's when I guess we just kick down the road. And at this point, you got to wake up, like you guys said, and be excited. My question for you guys I know Stamkos has center experience, but I know he's been playing a lot of wing here lately. And I don't know, at least right now, if we have a true center that's not named O'Reilly that would fit immediately in with those two guys in theory to be on that second or first line that you guys want to do. Is Colton Sissons really that center, or do you guys see somebody else sliding in and taking that spot, or is Stamkos going to be moving back to center, do you guys think?
Yep, thanks for the call, Mike. That, when you look at the roster, even after yesterday, Adam, and if you do it with the assumption that Stamkos is playing wing, that is the weak spot of the roster, is center. You got O'Reilly, who I think is a really good player. I don't think Ryan O'Reilly is a true number one center. And then other than that, the center depth is not great. Like Colton Sissons, we know what Colton Sissons is, but Colton Sissons is not a top six forward. Tommy Novak, I think, has some top six-ish abilities when it comes to his offense. I mean, he was a total disappearing act in the playoffs. And I said it yesterday, and I believe it. I personally do not believe that Tommy Novak is a legitimate top six forward. That's just me. Some people may disagree with that. That's fine. I did find, Andrew Brunette was on with Stillman yesterday. And of course, Stillman asked him about the lineup and where things could fit and how and all those things. And he did bring up the possibility of Stamkos playing center. Obviously Stamkos has played center, and we talked about this yesterday, a lot in his career. More recently, it's been on the wing. Now in Tampa, you've had the luxury to do that. I mean, they've had, Braden Point can play over there. They've had plenty of guys that can play center. So maybe they do try to put Stamkos back at center. If they went that route, I mean, it slots it better, because then it would be some combination of O'Reilly, Stamkos, Novak, Sissons as your centerman. And I think you'd feel better about that. Question is it the best idea to put Stamkos at center, or would it be better to leave him on the wing? I don't know.
Well, let's assume he plays wing, and he's been playing left wing. So let's assume they keep the top line together, Forsberg, O'Reilly, and Nyquist. And they put a second line together with Stamkos on the left side and Marchessault on the right.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're Tommy Novak and that's the role that you're playing, second line center, it's sink or swim time, baby.
Yeah,
like that's,
you're gonna find out quick.
You're gonna find out real quick if you can hang in this league, whether or not you can play with two great goal scorers. And keep in mind, Stamkos, I think his primary center for the past few years has been Braden Point, who is one of the best centers in the league.
Yep.
And he's played opposite wing with Nikita Kucherov.
Pretty good line.
Which is a pretty good line. Marchessault has been playing with Jack Eichel. So they're used to playing with high-end centers.
Yep.
Assuming that they stay on the wing, it's not going to be the same. Now, they're both really good players, and I expect them to continue to be productive, even if they're not playing with the same high-end players they were playing with on their previous teams. But if you're Tommy Novak and Andrew Brunette says to you, all right, Tommy, you're playing second line center, you've got Stamkos on your left and Marchessault on your right, as you said, we're going to learn real quick whether Tommy Novak is capable of playing a significant role in the NHL. If he can't make it work with those two guys, probably can't make it work with anybody.
That's the one part of the team right now that you wish you had one more guy, right? Like if they, let's live in a magical world where they did all they did yesterday and they were still able to land like Chandler Stevenson, who, by the way, just got an ungodly deal in Seattle, 7 years. So Predators, I don't think we're ever going to do that. But let's say they landed somebody like that. Then I think you'd look at this team and you'd say, okay. I mean, there's not a ton of weaknesses when you look at it. Maybe there's still not. Maybe Stamkos can play center, and that it'll be fine that way. Maybe Novak rises to the occasion, and playing with Stamkos and Marchessault really elevates him, and he turns into a bona fide top six player. If that happens, well, then the Predators are in good shape. I still have my concerns about the Novak part of this. We'll get more into the lineup here in just a few minutes. I want to approach this from the Trotz angle real quick, because I said heading into free agency yesterday, this is going to be a little bit more of a litmus test on the type of GM that he is. He was I think, more aggressive in free agency last offseason than most people expected him to be, with O'Reilly and Shen and Nyquist, and those deals worked out well. Predators got a lot of mileage out of those guys. They made the playoffs, 99 points, all that stuff. This is a different deal, what he did yesterday. It was super aggressive. It was as aggressive by far as the Predators have ever been in free agency. And beyond all that, the aggression, it worked. Like they got their guys. They brought in their targets. So, I think you and I have talked about the window. Barry Trotz, when he took the job, talked about, patience, and this could be a process. He also talked about heading into last season, like, I don't know how good we're going to be. Like, we could be bad. We could be sneaky good. And I think they kind of, toward the end of the season, kind of fit more into the sneaky good category. And then in an off season, after you got up there at the podium and said, need to get younger, need to, infuse a little bit of youth into the lineup, they go out and sign 34-year-old Steven Stamkos, 33-year-old Jonathan Marchessault, and over 30 Brady Shea, and extend their 29, almost 30-year-old goaltender. So they have leaned into the now. How does that influence the way you view Barry Trotz this window and the path that I think he has pretty clearly now chosen to go down?
There's a period of time that I don't think that you can discount when talking about the trajectory of the franchise under Barry Trotz. And that is the post-trade deadline part of the schedule after it was announced that Barry Trotz was coming in. So during the 2022-23 season, after they traded Ekholm and Jeannot and Niederreiter and Granlund, that period of time, remember, they, despite the fact that Roman Josi was out injured, Philip Forsberg was out injured, Matt Duchene was out injured, Ryan Johansson was out injured, like they made it 80 games before they were eliminated from postseason contention. Roman Josi was injured during that stretch, right? I'm not making that up.
That is correct.
Okay, I just want the other guys I knew. I was unsure about Roman, but you traded all those players. You had those players missing. Barry Trotz even said to me he was basically fielding a minor league team at the end of that season, and it took them 80 games before being eliminated from playoff contention, and that meant something to him because he thought to himself, if I bring in the right guys, this team can be better sooner than we think.
Yep. And
he brought in O'Reilly, Nyquist, and Shen. And as you just said, he said this team could be anywhere from bad to sneaky good. And in mid-February, it looked like it was going to be bad. Then we have the famous U2 story. Then things turned around. So I'm thinking that Barry Trotz came in, saw what this team had, saw the fight that they had at the end of that, the end of the 2022-23 season, and realized that it wasn't as bad as maybe he thought it looked from the outside. And, the additions last year worked out, and this team made the postseason to the surprise of most people. They played a competitive playoff series, and Barry Trotz felt emboldened to go out and take a huge swing. So I think, Barry Trotz, to his credit, he has been straightforward, as we know he is, just from him being here as a coach. He tells it like it is, and he has telegraphed what he is going to do. He said he was going to be bold. I like the quote he had yesterday where he said, I told our amateur scouts to take big swings in the draft, and who am I not to take big swings on the pro side?
Yeah.
And that's that's
which,
what,
by the way, if you're a fan, like, don't you love that?
Yeah, you have to. I mean, you don't want your GM to be conservative. Now, David Poile, to Ryan's call earlier, was not a big spender in free agency, but the guy wasn't afraid to make big trades.
Right.
So, David Poile took his swings too. But in 2 years as a GM, Barry Trotz has, made significant alterations to this team in more ways than one.
Well, I think a lot of things need to be pointed out. Barry Trotz clearly is not afraid to make the big moves and to take risks, which that's what this is. I mean, this is a risk that the Predators have taken here, electing to go this path and kind of leaning into this veteran-laden team, and now supplementing it with some firepower with Stamkos and with Marchessault. And look, I like Brady Shea. I think Brady Shea is a really good player. I'd probably be a little bit worried about years 5, 6, and 7 in that contract, but I like Brady Shea a lot.
I'm curious to see what he is like on a team other than the Hurricanes.
Yeah.
Because the Hurricanes have been one of the best defensive teams for several years.
Right.
And, Shea started his career with the Rangers, didn't work out there, came to Carolina, developed into a top 4 defenseman, but did it on a really strong defensive team. Now, the Predators were also a pretty good defensive team last year, too.
Right.
But I am curious to see how Shea does outside of the Rod Brind'Amour system and how much of it, if he can carry over that play from Carolina to Nashville.
But I think Trotz deserves credit for the aggression that we saw. Hey, look, Preds ownership. I mean, right now they're $179,000 over the cap. This is clearly ownership, and Bill Haslam and whoever else you want to credit over there said, yeah, go do it. Let's go win. And I don't know whether or not it's going to work. I don't know if it's going to result in a championship, but ownership clearly all in to try to get this group to win here. 615-737-1025, our phone number. Again, our text line is down. So if you're normally somebody who texts us, give us a call. 615-737-1025. The YouTube chat is flowing as well. We'll have more on the Barry Trotz part of this, the big moves made yesterday in free agency. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Welcome back in. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, broadcasting live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Robbie Stanley, Adam Vingan, Nick Keys are here with you on this Tuesday morning. A historic day for the Nashville Predators yesterday. Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, Brady Shea, all Nashville Predators. They also re-signed Alex Carrier, brought in Scott Wedgwood for the backup goalie position. Taking your thoughts on all of it, 615-737-1025. Your phone calls today, Text line is down. Let's go to our 1025 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in Chad in Murfreesboro. Chad, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, good morning, guys. Was glued to the app all day yesterday, listening to all this while I was on the road. Loved here, very excited. My thought, or just question, I guess, for both of you this morning, I had the exact same thought during the announcement to the signings yesterday with regards to Novak. And it gave me pause to sit there and think, well, do we think this may be a great opportunity? Because I think we know what Novak is, a decent player, but maybe a bottom six center. And maybe look to see if Juuso Parssinen or Fetchkov is ready, because I would much rather see what they've got as younger 20-year-old players as centermen playing with dynamite players around them. See if you got something with them or not. So just love to, I'll hang up and get y'all's thoughts.
Yeah, thanks for the call, Chad. I mean, it's an interesting thought. I don't know. I don't know that Svechkov is ready. I don't know that Svechkov is NHL ready. I think Parssinen is probably NHL ready. Do they view him as a center? Do they view him as a winger? I mean, he's basically been exclusively on the wing in Nashville. Now, that doesn't mean he can't play center. I mean, he's a big body kid, and he can look. I'm not willing to give up on Parssinen. Like, last year did not go as smoothly for him as I thought it might, and clearly, by about the halfway point, they had seen enough. They sent him back down to Milwaukee. And he didn't come back up until the playoffs, and he got into Game 6, and that was the last we saw of the team. And he just not a lot in the second half of the season when they were doing their winning at the NHL level from really any of these young guys, other than Luke Evangelista. So that's a long way of me saying I don't know that Parssinen or certainly a Svechkov is ready for that. Is Novak prepared for that? Is Novak ready to play with Stamkos and Marchessault? I don't know. And that's kind of that's the interesting scenario of what do you do, Adam, if it becomes pretty clear that Novak can't do it and can't play with those two. What do you do with the lineup? Like, do you have to move Stamkos to center at that point? Like, they may have to play Steven Stamkos at center. And I don't know at this stage of his career whether or not that's the best fit for him, but it may end up being something that they have to do.
I would give Tommy Novak the opportunity to see if he can do it. And although he was nowhere near as impactful during the postseason as he has shown himself to be during the regular season, he has shown flashes of being a solid playmaker. And I think this would be the ultimate test of whether or not Tommy Novak can hang with the best players on his team or even in the league. If you can't be productive playing with a surefire Hall of Famer on your left and a recent Conn Smythe Trophy winner and 40 goal scorer on your right, then there's probably not a lot of hope for you as a top six player in the NHL. I'm not going to say that if Tommy Novak can't play with those two, then he can't play in the NHL. That's not what I'm saying. He could be a perfectly good third line guy. But this is Tommy Novak's opportunity. If I'm him and I see these moves, it's a huge challenge for me to prove that I can do it. And as I said, Tommy Novak is not Braden Point. Tommy Novak is not Jack Eichel. Those are the centers that Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault have been playing with over the past couple of years. But as long as he can get them the puck in prime scoring areas, which he has shown an ability to do, then I think he'll be okay. But if it doesn't work, it does throw a wrench into your plans a little bit, because you may be forced to play Steven Stamkos at center. And I would agree with you, Robby, that is not something I would want to do for long periods of time. If you have to do it in a pinch, someone gets hurt for a couple weeks and Stamkos has to play center. Let's say Ryan O'Reilly gets banged up and misses 5 games. If you have to play Stamkos at center for 5 games, I think I would be comfortable with them doing that. Over the course of a full season, I wouldn't do that. So, as you said, things can change.
Let's expound on that, though. So why, for those listening, why is center more difficult to play, especially at this stage of his career when you're talking about a 34-year-old?
It requires you to be all over the ice. It requires you, to be able to get up and down the ice more efficiently. And I'm not sure Steven Stamkos at this stage of his career, is, capable of doing that for long stretches of time. Would you
Yep.
say that's fair?
I would say that that's fair. We got another question about why not give Cody Glass a shot at centering that line. I don't know that Cody Glass is going to be on the team.
Yeah.
I mean-
I heard what Andrew Burnett had to say at the end of the season about Cody Glass.
It's not encouraging.
It wasn't encouraging. I would be shocked if Cody Glass is still on this team come training camp.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to work out. Now, at the end of the day, when you think back to that trade, the Predators actually made it out the best of the teams involved in that trade.
They did.
They got Cody Glass. Vegas got Nolan Patrick, whose career was unfortunately ended prematurely because of, I think, head injuries.
Like vertigo stuff.
Vertigo, yeah. Ryan Ellis barely played for the Flyers before his career seems effectively over.
Yep.
So the Predators got the most out of any of the players in terms of games played. So, good for them, I guess.
Yeah.
But I just think that Cody Glass, he had his moments. I was at the game with Jared, actually. Was it the game against the Colorado Avalanche that he had the hat trick?
Yep.
It was great to see him do that.
It was cool.
I'm not expecting that from Cody Glass. I have climbed off of I was never really on the Cody Glass train.
Yeah.
But I've gotten off the Cody Glass.
If Cody
train.
Glass has a bounce back year and makes the team and can carve out a role for himself, that's gravy. There's no plan in my mind that really involves Cody Glass moving forward here. So it's up to him to change that. But Cody Glass is not an option to me to be centering Stamkos and Marceau. Just he's shown nothing that would lead me to believe that he can do that.
And I understand the idea of Colton Sissons playing there. We've seen Colton Sissons play higher in the lineup over the years, and
they got to get out of that though.
Yeah,
like I like Colton Sissons a lot. Colton Sissons is a really good player. Colton Sissons is not a top 6 forward, and he does not need to be playing with Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault.
Novak has playmaking chops.
Yeah,
that's not Colton Sissons' bread and butter.
Yeah,
and look, Colton Sissons. We don't talk about Colton Sissons as like a core member of this team, but he's been on this team for a long time. And he's not. He doesn't have the same. He doesn't grab your attention in the same way the other players do. But he's been a key member of this team for 10 years now.
Yeah.
It feels like
he's been around for a long time.
Colton Sissons is an important part of this team, no doubt. But yeah, I'm not playing him up there.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. So let's throw out the question that I think really matters here. Does yesterday's moves make the Nashville Predators a Stanley Cup contender? We'll take your thoughts on that on our phone line, 615-737-1025. Adam and I will get into that coming up next. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Hour number 2, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Adam Vengen, Nick Keyser here with you on this Tuesday morning. A historic day for the Nashville Predators yesterday, spending a lot of money in free agency. They land Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, Brady Shea, Scott Wedgwood. They re-sign Alex Carrier. Big day for the Nashville Predators yesterday. Taking your thoughts on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Our text line down today, so if you normally text in, give us a phone call. We'll take your thoughts on the Preds all show long, 615-737-1025. So, Adam, I think the most important question out of all this, as fun as this is awesome moment for this fan base. You know, had some people texting me yesterday that are kind of casual hockey fans but love the Preds, and we're like, holy bleep, Steven Stamkos is a freaking Nashville Predator. Like, it's a big day for the fan base, for the franchise. And I think, you know, one thing we haven't talked about yet, I think the ticket office is going to do very well from this. I think when you start seeing some 91 Steven Stamkos Nashville Predators jerseys, that's going to be really cool. So all that stuff aside, I think the most important question is, are the Predators a Stanley Cup contender? Does this vault the Predators into the category of Stanley Cup contention? And, you know, Stanley Cup contender is, I think, a broad term. There are, I think, different tiers of that. But do the Predators qualify as a Stanley Cup contender? Now, I don't know exactly where they were with the betting odds heading into yesterday in terms of winning the Stanley Cup. My guess is probably right around the middle, 16, 17, somewhere in that neighborhood. On the FanDuel Sportsbook, they are 10 at the moment. So they've moved up to plus 2,000 odds. The Panthers, Oilers, Stars, Devils, Avalanche, Hurricanes, Maple Leafs, Rangers, and Golden Knights are the teams that are ahead of Nashville on the FanDuel Sportsbook. Preds are 10th on that list. Ahead of, by the way, the Tampa Bay Lightning. So there's that.
Keep that list up for a minute.
Yep.
So let's go through this. So give me the teams. And by the way, my definition of a Stanley Cup contender is a team that can actually win the Stanley Cup. I'm not talking about a team that can make the playoffs and hope things break right. I'm talking about a team that has a legitimate chance of actually winning the championship. So let's look at let's go through the teams above them in the sports book.
Well, I think Panthers, Oilers, Stars, we would all agree. Like, we don't need to spend any time on that. We would all agree.
The Stars, I mean,
the Stars are a Stanley Cup contender.
Yes, but they didn't have a great day yesterday.
No.
They re-signed Matt Duchene.
They did.
Who worked well with them, but they lost Chris Tanev. Their defense took a hit mostly. They bought out Ryan Suter. They lost Yanni Hakanpää.
Yeah.
I don't think they did anything of significance up front. They brought in Ilya Lyubushkin.
They did.
On their defense. They signed Casey DeSmith to replace Scott Wedgwood. They brought in Matt Dumba on defense. Didn't have a great day yesterday. I feel like it was maybe a wash when all things are said and done. But yes, I would agree that the Stars are a contender. They just made it to the Western Final.
Tied for fourth on the list is the Devils with Colorado.
Well, Jacob Markstrom will certainly help because they've had terrible goaltending last year. Him and Jake Allen, Markstrom and Jake Allen make up a pretty good tandem, and you're hoping for a bounce back from, you know, Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier. I mean, they were a 100-point team 2 seasons ago, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
They brought in Brett Pesce on defense.
They did.
They brought in Brendan Dillon on defense. They added Stefan Nason up front. But like I said, they've got a good core there between Brott and Hughes and Hischier. You know, they have Timo Meier. Like, that's a good team. I don't know if I would give them better odds than the Predators.
Yeah, I mean, well, Markstrom also is going to be 35 and has been not very good the last 2 years. So I'm interested to see how that works out.
All right, who else?
Colorado, we would all agree, is a Stanley Cup contender. They have Nathan McKinnon and Cale.
They do have those two, and they didn't do much yesterday either. I mean, they re-signed Jonathan Drouin, who was a good fit on a line with McKinnon last year. They have Rantanen. Goaltender is still kind of an issue.
It is.
But yes, when you have McKinnon playing as well as he did, obviously won all the awards this year, right? So hard to argue with that, but I feel like the Avalanche are slipping a little bit.
Toronto at plus 1,500.
They'll always be there.
no one ever actually believes they are, including me. They're not.
I like the moves Toronto made yesterday. They brought in Tanev. They gave him a contract I think they will inevitably regret, but that happens a lot in free agency. They brought in Oliver Ekman-Larsson, who reestablished himself in a year, in Florida for a year, won the Stanley Cup. I like the addition of Anthony Stolarz in goal. I think he's one of the more underrated goalies in the NHL, and I wonder if he'll get more playing time. But yes, when you have Austin Matthews and William Nylander and Mitch Marner, who I still think is going to be there, you're always going to be in that conversation. But I'll believe it when I see it with the Maple Leafs.
Then there's the Rangers at plus 1,500 as well. I think they would certainly qualify as a Stanley Cup contender.
Yeah.
Vegas is interesting. Vegas is the only other team Vegas is 9th on the list that is ahead of the Predators. And they just lost Jonathan Marchessault. I mean, when you look at their roster, they've actually lost a lot.
They lost Marchessault. They lost William Carrier.
Yep.
They lost Michael Amadio. Who else did they lose? They recently they moved on
Chandler
from
Stephenson.
They lost Chandler Stevenson,
Yep.
Of course. They moved on from Riley Smith last year, who by the way was traded again
Yep.
to the Rangers from the Penguins. Yeah, they've lost, and they lost Alec Martinez. They lost a lot of the players that helped them win the Stanley Cup.
I think they are as high on this list because with them, you're always wondering like what's right around the corner.
There's going to be
there's a lot of connection with them, rightly or wrong, to Marner.
Yeah.
Like will they try to make a push for Marner?
I don't know how they're going to do it, but watching Vegas lose all these players yesterday, and the team did not, they didn't replace Marchessault. It makes me think that they're going to do something big before the start of the season because that's typically what they do. It's going to be a really big transaction because they're going to have to move money out. But Vegas is aggressive, so I understand them being that high on that list.
So I'll put it to you this way. The teams that I think are clearly better than the Nashville Predators right now. I think the Florida Panthers are better.
Yes.
I think the Edmonton Oilers are better.
Yes.
I think the Dallas Stars are better.
Mm-hmm.
And that might be where the list stops.
As unequivocally better.
Unequivocally better. Now, there are teams that are probably better, like Carolina, I think can be better. I think Colorado can be better. Toronto, New York certainly can be better. And I might put New York as clearly better than them. They're pretty darn good. Vegas, are they clearly better than the Predators right now?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Is Vancouver clearly better than the Predators right now? Speaking of teams that didn't have a great day. No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Are the LA Kings, Boston Bruins clearly better than the Predators right now? No. So by that definition, I think you have to include the Predators as a team that could win the Stanley Cup. I think there are three to me that are kind of like head and shoulders above everybody else right now. I would go Florida, Edmonton, Dallas as my top three. And I don't think the Predators are in that tier. But I do think that they're right there with the Colorados, Vegas, Torontos, Carolinas of the world based on what they've done yesterday.
Yeah. I think when you consider, the pedigrees of the players they added yesterday, the goal scoring they added yesterday. I saw this. I looked this up yesterday. The Predators were 15th in the NHL, so right in the middle, in goals scored by forwards last season. I believe it was 223 goals scored by forwards last season.
Yeah.
They added two forwards that scored a combined 82 goals last season.
That should help.
Now, are Marchessault and Stamkos going to both score 40 goals next season? Who knows?
Probably not.
I think it's a safe bet that if they both stay healthy and play the majority of the games, that 60 goals is a floor combined.
Oh, I would agree.
So I think you can count on them to at least get to 30 each. Now, beyond that, who's to say? But I think 60 combined for Marchessault and Stamkos is the floor.
I would agree.
So they're going to get better there. Shea is one of the better goal-scoring defensemen in the NHL.
Yep.
He had 13 goals last year, I believe, 11 at even strength. As I said yesterday, over the past two seasons, the only two defensemen in the NHL who have scored more even strength goals than Brady Shea are Erik Karlsson and Cale Makar. End of list. He has the same amount of even strength goals over the past 2 seasons as Roman Josi. And Shea is a good all-around defender, but I think his impact is mostly felt in the offensive zone in terms of the amount of shot attempts he throws at the net, the goals he scores, his one-timers. Like that's where Shea makes his biggest impact, is generating offense.
Yeah.
So that's why I think it's good to have him with Roman Josi, like on the same team as Roman Josi, because you have another option there.
I want you to think about this power play unit that I'm about to roll off just
All
off
right.
the top of my head. Ryan O'Reilly, Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, Philip Forsberg, Roman Josi.
That sounds like a power play unit like the Oilers have or the Rangers have, where they're on the ice for the full 2 minutes. Like,
I think that needs to be the case.
Maybe
not in like game 38 of the regular season, but in the playoffs, yes.
Can you name the Edmonton Oilers second power play unit?
No,
Trick question.
I
You
cannot.
can't, because they don't have one.
Right.
Like, it's Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Zach Hyman, and Evan Bouchard. They're on the ice for 2 minutes.
Yes.
And in Washington, Alex Ovechkin is on the ice for 2 minutes. Like, that's just what happens. And I wonder if you wanted to make a second unit, maybe you put Nyquist on the first unit, you put Marchessault on the second unit to give them the score, you put Shea on the second unit to spell Roman Josi, Evangelista. But
I'm all about loading it up.
Yeah,
Load it up.
Absolutely. Like, the power play was a big issue in the playoffs, and it would be, like we talked about this yesterday. With all due respect to Philip Forsberg, who's got a great shot, we obviously know that. Steven Stamkos, he owns the left circle.
Yeah,
that's his spot.
I think that should probably be. I think that's foregone conclusion.
Right, and it may not be Nikita Kucherov and Victor Hedman feeding Stamkos pucks on the power play, but Roman Josi, Jonathan Marchessault, Gus Nyquist.
And I don't think they typically had Forsberg on the left side anyway. Like, he kind of wheels.
Yeah.
Right around that top
I'd have
of the
to
right
look
circle.
at exactly like where most of his production came from on the power play. But Stamkos owns the left circle.
No doubt.
Just like Ovechkin owns the left circle in Washington.
No doubt.
Like, that's where he's going to be. And he scores a ton of goals from there. I mean, the guy attempted more one-timers than any other player in the NHL last season in all situations.
Yeah.
So that's a weapon that the Predators haven't had very much of. When was the last? I mean, it's probably since Shea Weber's heyday, from the slap shot from the point, have the Predators, that was probably the last time they had a weapon like Steven Stamkos' one-timer.
Well, and just thinking about that unit, because I think whether they start that way or not, you're eventually going to see a power play unit with those 5.
Yes.
You're going to have 340 goal scorers on that unit, a guy that has been perennially in the Norris Trophy conversation, and a Conn Smythe winner in Ryan O'Reilly. That's a pretty darn impressive power play unit.
Yeah, I mean,
and Andrew Burnett, power play savant. If you're Burnett, you can't ask for much more than that in terms of trying to coach up a power play.
No, he's got to be rubbing his hands together as he sits in front of that whiteboard, putting together his lineup. But yeah, I think the Predators should. They need to have a second unit, but I don't want to see them very much.
Unless they're just really tired. Yeah, you just stay on the bench.
Yeah.
615-737-1025, our phone number. Throwing it out there to you. Are the Predators Stanley Cup contenders? We'll take your thoughts on that on our phone line. Again, our text line down. Give us a call, 615-737-1025. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Join us this Thursday, July the 4th, America, at the 18th Annual Music City Hot Chicken Festival at East Park. A spectacular day filled with live music, contests, and, of course, hot chicken. It's free, so bring the whole family out there. Discover more at hotchickenfestival.com.
My side of town.
That's right.
Come to the east side, have some hot chicken.
Yep.
Enjoy it. So it's a really wonderful event. I always like to go. So you should make a point to go if you're around.
Hotchickenfestival.com. Check it out. 615-737-1025. Our phone number, our phone lines, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Taking your phone calls today throughout the show. Our text line is down. The YouTube chat is flowing, so appreciate everybody contributing on the YouTube chat as well.
We figured out the power play during the break.
We did.
So you have Steven Stamkos in the left circle.
Yep.
Philip Forsberg patrolling the right side of the ice. Roman Josi up top. Ryan O'Reilly in front of the net. Jonathan Marchessault in the bumper position in the slot. There you go.
Pretty good.
Never has to leave the ice. I'm telling you, like, if I am Andrew Brunette, I am employing the Oilers, Rangers, I'm sure there are other teams as well, model that my top 5 power play guys don't leave the ice.
Yeah.
Unless absolutely necessary.
I agree.
There should be no second unit. That's all I'm saying. I mean, there should be, but used very, very rarely.
Very infrequently. I would agree. I would agree with that. At TN Newfie on YouTube says they're contender on paper, but they can they have chemistry, learn a new system? No doubt these guys will do well, but the first month could be ugly or they could be great. Power play should vastly improve. Another commenter on YouTube says, define contender. I think they're good enough on paper to be top 8 and compete for a cup. Injuries could derail that, of course, but I like the bold moves. Should Trotz be president next? Burrow Ben says, it's already annoying with all this "are we the best" talk. I knew it would happen if the Preds got Stamkos. Getting ahead of yourselves, guys. This is from Ben on YouTube.
Well, I understand Ben's perspective. It's very easy to get wrapped up in the excitement of your team adding big name players.
Sure.
And for the Predators, that doesn't happen very often, especially in free agency when it never really happened until yesterday. So I understand where Ben is coming from. You know, there are plenty of questions about this team. We've mentioned the second line center position. What's going to happen there? We've talked about the fact that the players they signed are older players, specifically Stamkos and Marchessault. They're both in their early to mid 30s. Their effectiveness, their effective years, they don't have very many of them left, which is why it is important to win sooner rather than later if you're the Predators.
You're all in right now.
Yes.
Yep.
But here's I think where people are getting excited. So you're just talking about the roster. Yes, on paper, it's one of our favorite terms, on paper. We've talked about what you add in Stamkos, the lineage of Steven Stamkos. We've talked about the impact that Jonathan Marchessault has made on the offensive end over the past few years. Roman Josi was just the runner-up for the Norris Trophy again. He was a first-team NHL All-Star. Philip Forsberg is coming off a career year. He was a second-team NHL All-Star. UC Saros had a down year by his standard, but was still the 5th goalie in the league by Vezina Trophy voting. There is a lot to like about this team.
Yep.
On paper. I know, on paper. Remember, I think one of the other commenters talked about how the first month of the season could be rough. Think about what happened with the Florida Panthers 2 seasons ago. They were the Panthers were supposed to be as good 2 seasons ago as they were last season.
Correct.
The problem was it took them a while to figure it out. And that's why they were an 8th seed in the postseason. And they, of course, made it to the Stanley Cup final before losing to Vegas. And then they got their legs underneath them, and they were great from start to finish this past season. So it helps that this team played their best hockey down the stretch. It was rough for the Predators early in the season with Brunette. They did have to adjust to a change in style, but they did it.
Right.
And I think that will help Stamkos and Marchessault and Shea, is now the returning players have a year under their belt playing for Andrew Brunette. I feel like there will be less of a learning curve for the team, and by extension, those players.
Well, and that may be, Brunette said it yesterday, and it makes sense. Like that's probably what you just talked about there, a pretty good reason to leave Forsberg, O'Reilly, Nyquist alone to begin the season and just let them start together because of how well they played together last year. Now, I would not be married to that all year. Like I've talked about Nyquist. Like Nyquist had an unbelievable season for them last year. And I'm not saying that he's just going to go from 75 points to 30, but he had never approached what he did last year before. Can he really do that again? I don't know. We'll see. I have my doubts as to whether or not he could do that again. So does it get to a point, and I talked about this yesterday, Marchessault was playing on the left side with Vegas. Now I think he can play the right.
I think actually he was playing the right.
He was playing. He has played both.
Okay.
At the end of the year last year, he was playing on the left.
I couldn't remember if he played on the left wing with Eichel or not.
He can play both.
Okay.
So he is the guy that I think clearly can move over. But do you ever entertain the idea of having Forsberg, O'Reilly, Stamkos together? I'm sure you'll probably see that at some point this year. Do you ever entertain the idea of having, Forsberg down there with Novak and you've got Stamkos and Marchessault playing with O'Reilly? There's different options now that they've got at their disposal. And I'm really interested to see how Brunette handles that. I'm with you. Anybody who says, well, the O'Reilly line was so good last year, why would you break it up? I get it. I would probably start that way. I would probably start with Forsberg, O'Reilly, Nyquist together. But I don't last year they didn't really have a choice. They had to, those guys played really well. So to their credit, why would you break it up when they were playing well anyway? But nobody else was really going to play. It was those guys. And they at times just drug that team along offensively. Got a little bit more options if you're Andrew Brunette this year in terms of the way that you can construct your lineup.
I mean, one thing they can do as well, we're talking about the Oilers in the previous segment. When the Oilers needed a goal,
they loaded up.
Chris Knobloch would put Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid on the same line.
Correct.
It was usually McDavid, Draisaitl, and Zach Hyman. So maybe they're not on the same line, Stamkos, Marchessault, Forsberg. Maybe they're on separate lines. But if you need a goal late in the game, you can put Marchessault on the top line. You can put Stamkos on the top line. You can load it up.
Yep.
And when you absolutely need a goal. And that's also good to have, is that I like when teams have those super lines that they can pull out when necessary. Now,
Yep.
I don't know if I would have it consistently, on an everyday basis, but Predators are down a goal in a division game. They need to tie the score. Stamkos moves up to the right side with Forsberg and O'Reilly, or Marchessault moves up there.
Or Stamkos plays the middle, and you got Forsberg and Marchessault on your left and right.
Yeah.
You could do that too.
I like when the Oilers do that. I think it's fun when the Oilers say, all right, we need a goal. Leon, Connor, get out there. And they usually dominate. And I think that's something the Predators can do too.
Taking more of your thoughts. Are the Nashville Predators Stanley Cup contenders? Your thoughts on the YouTube chat. Give us a call, 615-737-1025. We'll take your thoughts on our phone line as well. More coming up next. We'll also get into how the Predators defense is constructed now as well with the addition of Brady Shea. That's coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Adam Vengen, Nick Keyser here with you on this Tuesday morning. A massive day for the Predators yesterday in NHL free agency. We've been taking your thoughts on that all show long. Our text line down today, give us a call, 615-737-1025. The YouTube chat going as well. Take your thoughts on there. Brady Shea also added to the mix yesterday. We've talked a lot about Stamkos and Marchessault today. Brady Shea, 7 years, $7 million per season. So that's a hefty price that the Predators paid for Brady Shea. Now that he's in the fold, you brought Carrier back as well. So there was a point yesterday, Adam, where we went to bed Sunday night and Pierre LeBrun put it out there that Carrier was close to having a deal done. And then we heard basically nothing about Alex Carrier all day yesterday until right before the press conference with Barry Trotz. So I thought for a minute, like did Jonathan Marchessault's contract kind of come out of nowhere and the Predators felt like they had to pounce on it and that changed their plans with Carrier? But no, Carrier back in the fold, 3 years, just over $11 million, $3.75 million per year. So I think a nice deal for Carrier, a nice deal for the Predators. So with that in mind, Shea, Josi, Schenn, Carrier, I would assume Spencer Stastny, Dante Fabro on the roster as well, Jeremy Lauzon. You've got your defense set if you're the Predators. How strong of a group do you think that is? How do you view the Predators on defense with the addition of Brady Shea?
I like the addition of Brady Shea. The big question for me is, do you put Shea on a pair with Roman Josi? We saw McDonough and Josi a lot together.
Yep.
With Josi playing on his offhand because Shea is left-handed. Do you load up your top pair with Shea and Josi? Or do you look for a more balanced approach and have Shea anchoring a second pair with another player? I mean, do you put Josi with... So Yosi's most common partners last year, his most common partner was Dante Fabro.
Yeah.
Followed by Ryan McDonough. And then he had some time with Luke Schenn. Josi didn't play a lot with Carrier last season. I like the idea of Josi and Carrier. But then, you're breaking up Lauzon and Carrier.
It doesn't sound like they have much of an appetite to do that. Like, okay. Brunette was on with Stillman yesterday and was basically like, I don't know if I can see breaking up Lauzon and Carrier. One thing that I think is a change that they're clearly not afraid of. Like, I think they kind of like Josi on the right.
Okay.
Now, I don't know that it's going to be a permanent thing, but Burnett was talking yesterday about, Josi did really well on the right side, like does really well on the right. And I think they like the idea of kind of opening him up for that one-timer more often. So, I'm with you. Is the best approach to load up the top unit and have Shea on the left, Josi on the right? Maybe at times. Is that the best approach all the time? I don't know. Would you be better served kind of spreading out the wealth a little bit? But I'm interested to see what they do there because they're clearly, I think, not afraid of putting Josi over on the right.
So how about Shea and Josi, Lauzon and Carrier, Stastny and Schenn as your top six?
Yeah. I mean, poor Dante Fabro, always the odd man out. But, yeah, I like it. Like, I thought late in the season and into the playoffs before he got hurt, I kind of like the Stastny-Schenn duo there. Like, Schenn, basically, you just tell him to hang back. Stastny can move really, really well. We know, Stastny, I think he's going to be a good player for them. I don't know if he's going to be like some superstar defenseman, but I think he's a good player. So I like that makeup there. I think most Predators fans would probably say, well, just take Luke Schenn out and put Dante Fabro in. I don't think they're going to do that, but it's nice to have Fabro around.
Yeah, absolutely. I still don't think he's going to be on this team for that much longer.
Well, he was definitely one person I thought about yesterday when Barry Trotz said that he's probably looking to move somebody out. I think he could be a candidate for that. It could be Glass. It could be, we had some people ask today, could it be Novak? I mean, maybe. I would be surprised by that, but maybe.
They just signed him.
They just signed. I mean, that doesn't mean you can't move him out,
right.
But I would be surprised if it was Novak. I mean, if it's Novak, what are you replacing him with, right?
Cody Glass.
Somebody's going to have to play center. So probably, yeah, Cody Glass. So Fabro could be who Barry Trotz is referring to. I don't know. Maybe he's the guy that gets moved out. That'd be $2.5 million off the books.
It's good to have him. He has a lot of experience playing big minutes, but as I said yesterday, it just feels like every time you think Dante Fabro is going to take a step, he kind of bumps his head on the ceiling.
And my question would be, $2.5 million is not a huge amount of money. It is a decent amount of money to be paying somebody who's not playing.
Correct.
Right? So would you be better off trying to move out Dante Fabro and then just bringing up Del Gaizo to be your seventh defenseman?
Yeah, I think you don't want your depth defenseman, as you said, making a significant amount. Now, 2.5 might not seem like a significant amount, but for a team that's not apparently is over the cap, $2.5 million is something. I think your depth defenseman needs to be a guy on like a league minimum deal or thereabouts. Or an entry level contract.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I think that if they are looking to create some sort of wiggle room under the cap, I feel like Dante Fabro is a prime candidate to be moved. And if you move him and Glass, how much does that save you? What's Glass making?
I think is he making 2.5 as well?
I don't know off the top of my head, but you move both of them and that's $5 million then, right? So
yeah, he's making 2.5.
All right. So they're both making 2.5. So maybe you move both of them,
But how do you move Cody Glass? Because here's why I asked that. I think if they could have moved Cody Glass,
they would have done it already.
It would have happened already. I think I don't know who out there is looking at that and saying, yeah, I'll take on Cody Glass for $2.5 million.
And you can bury him in the minors and save some money. I think you have to carry like a 1.15 or 1.2. I don't remember what the calculus is. You can't put his entire cap hit in the minors, but you can put probably about half of it.
Yeah.
So that saves you some money. I mean, that could
be what you have to do.
You might have to bury him in the minors. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, if he doesn't quote unquote make the team, then he's going through waivers. I doubt somebody's picking him up on waivers, but I mean, if they did, that would solve your problem right there. But I mean, that was my approach. Like somebody asked me about Glass yesterday, could they trade it? And I'm not going to say that the answer is unequivocally no, but my guess is they have probably already looked at that. That would be my guess.
I would have to imagine so. I just heard what Andrew Brunette had to say about Cody Glass at the end of the season, similar to what he said about Philip Tomasino. But I feel like with Philip Tomasino, he at least like had some optimism. It sounded like he had some optimism.
With Cody Glass, he was like, he's got to figure out if he actually wants to play.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah, it's not good. And look, for anybody who's been around Cody Glass, great kid, wish nothing but the best for him. And one of the best moments of the entire regular season last year was his hat trick. It was awesome. And to watch his emotion after that, it was great. So hopefully he's in a good spot mentally heading into this year where you can, whatever his best version is, because I will say, I don't think we saw that last year. He showed enough the year before to where I know he's a better player than what he put out there last year. He is not like the idea that he's going to one day turn into anything close to living up to the draft pick that he is. Like he's not, but can he be a decent bottom six player for you? Maybe, but I think he's running out of chances here. Like, I mean, there, like it or not, there are guys coming up that are passing him that I don't know that I see a future for him here with this team.
And that's how I feel about Fabro. Like, Carrier has passed him big time. I feel like at one point they were on level footing. Maybe even Fabro was ahead of Carrier. But over the past few years, Carrier has overtaken Fabro on the depth chart.
Yeah.
So, it might be wise to move both. You may just have to. I mean, Cody Glass might be a future considerations type trade.
He might be.
Just take him.
Yeah.
We just take him. Or a 7th round draft pick. Yes. Just take him. Like that might be the move for Cody Glass. But if you're looking for cap space, instead of having two guys on your team that make $2.5 million per season sitting on the bench, you could have the, Yuso Parsonen and Mark Del Gaizo who make little money and save yourself some room. Like that would be a wise investment.
It was interesting to hear Stamkos talk yesterday about kind of like the construction of a roster, right? So it is true. Like when you think about the ingredients to win a championship, elite forward is the first thing I think of. Like you got to have some elite forwards. I think Philip Forsberg would qualify as an elite forward. He's not Connor McDavid, but he's an elite forward. Steven Stamkos is an elite forward. Jonathan Marchessault is an elite forward. He talked about Stanley Cup winners having an absolute stud defenseman. And when you look around, like, Vegas had basically a defensive group by committee, but they got some studs back there. Forsling turned into a heck of a player for Florida. Obviously in Tampa, we know Hedman. Yossi fits that bill with the Predators. And then in goal, you got Saros. Like he kind of went through the checklist of you got to have elite forwards, you got to have one stud defenseman, and you got to have a really good goalie. And kind of going through the checklist of part of that being part of the reason why Nashville was attractive to him. And it's interesting to think about it from that way. Like, we've talked all hour about them being a Stanley Cup contender, or do they have the DNA of a Stanley Cup champion? Like when you look at their roster, is it constructed in a way where you say, yeah, that reminds me of some Stanley Cup champions that I've seen in the past? And I still don't feel great about center, which is my big hesitation here.
Mine as well.
But I do. You can see some of the other parts of the roster, like when you factor in what he was talking about with elite forwards, stud defenseman, stud goalie. They definitely have that.
Yeah. I mean, quickly, you can think about the teams that have won in recent years. There are some exceptions. Aiden Hill would not be considered a stud goalie. Now, he played like one, but he wasn't a stud goalie.
Right.
The Golden Knights on the back end had Alex Pietrangelo, Shea Theodore, Alec Martinez. They had a really deep defense group. Obviously, the Colorado Avalanche have Cale Makar.
Yep.
And they didn't have a stud goalie. Darcy Kemper was average during that playoffs. During
a couple
playoffs.
Freak shows up there, though.
Yeah, but they do have a couple of freaks up there. Obviously Stamkos would know. He had Andrei Vasilevsky. He had Victor Hedman. And I would put Roman Josi in the same class as Victor Hedman in terms of, where he ranks in the pecking order of top defensemen.
Yep.
And now UC Saros does not have the trophy case that Andrei Vasilevsky does. But I would say that UC Saros, in terms of where he would rank among the top goalies in the league, is not far off from Vasilevsky.
I would agree.
I would not put them on the same tier.
No.
But I don't think there would be very many goalies between them. Maybe 2 or 3 times.
Well, and I think there's pressure. There's always pressure on your goalie. But I think, and I said this when they signed him, I think there's significant pressure on him, and I think it ramped up yesterday. Like you have now surrounded him with pieces where this should be the best shot he's had, right? Like we talked about UC Saros' playoff record, and is he ever going to get it done in the playoffs? Can he win a playoff series? All that stuff. And I do think it's fair to say that when he's been in the playoffs, with the exception of the Arizona bubble series and how weird that was, the Predators have been the underdog in all of those. Like they were the underdog against Carolina. He didn't play against Colorado, and they were the underdog against Vancouver. Like, I'm not saying I don't know who their matchup is going to be in the playoffs next year, but this is, I think, clearly on paper the best shot that they've had with him as starting goalie.
Yeah. I mean, as you said, the Arizona series in the qualifying round was not good for anybody.
No.
Saros was not good in that series. The team itself was not good in that series. It was bad. But the other 2 series that Saros has started, the series against the Hurricanes and the series against the Canucks, I said this with Willie last week. I am still on team. This town ain't big enough for the 2 of them. I am firmly in the camp of, now that UC Saros has been re-signed, you have to trade Yaroslav Askarov. That's just the team I'm on. But I do not subscribe to the theory that UC Saros is incapable of winning a playoff series. He was good against Carolina. He was good especially at the end of the series against Vancouver. He did had a rough game. He had a rough game at the start, but he was lights out in games 5 and 6.
Yep.
The reason why the Predators were unable to win those series, specifically this past series, was because they couldn't score goals.
Yeah.
That's not on UC Saros. The Predators allowed 13 goals in 6 games. Now, I don't know how many empty netters there were in there, so Saros didn't allow 13 goals, I don't think, in 6 games. But they allowed 13 goals in 6 games. That's 2.17, I believe, goals against per game. That should win you a playoff series. The problem is the Predators averaged 2 goals a game scoring. So I don't put that on Saros. I think, but now you're right. The fact that they have built this team up and people think it's going to be, a force to be reckoned with, that puts pressure on UC Saros to finally get over that hump.
I want to drill down on the Stamkos part of this coming up next. How big a deal is this for the city, for the franchise, to have Steven Stamkos on your hockey team? We'll get into that coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Got some tickets to give away. A 4-pack of tickets to see the Nashville Sounds take on Iowa next Thursday, July the 11th at First Horizon Park. Be caller number 5, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Caller 5 will win a 4-pack of tickets to see the Sounds take on Iowa next Thursday, July the 11th at First Horizon Park. Robbie Stanley, Adam Vengen, Nick Keys are here with you on this Tuesday morning. Adam, we woke up today, and Steven Stamkos is a Nashville Predator. Imagine saying that sentence a couple of years ago. Steven Stamkos, Nashville Predator. It was interesting because I went back and freezing cold taked myself yesterday when I talked about after the McDonough trade of, well, you can pretty much forget about Steven Stamkos if you're a Predators fan, because the McDonough trade signaled to me, I think to a lot of people, and I think potentially even to Steven Stamkos, that the Lightning were putting the band back together, and they're going to make one last kind of like kick at the can run here to try to win another Stanley Cup. And we know what went down with the Lightning, and I think Stamkos, based on his comments yesterday at a couple of different places, is pretty hurt by the way that things ultimately transpired in Tampa Bay. But Steven Stamkos is a Nashville Predator. So I was thinking about this last night, like trying to put this in the context of the city as a whole. Like when you want to factor in the Titans, the Preds, like how big a deal is this? Now, this is not Steven Stamkos at 27, in the prime of his career. It's Steven Stamkos at 34. Now, it is also Steven Stamkos coming off of 80-point, 40-goal season. So still a very productive player, and still a player that I think has a chance to make a huge impact on this team and on this franchise. But, I mean, the fact of the matter is, as a city, with the professional sports franchises that we have here, the bottom line is we just have not seen very many guys like the caliber of Steven Stamkos roll through here, right? I mean, especially free agent wise. Like when you look at the free agent history of the Predators and the Titans, it's not a very illustrious list. Like people don't often actively choose to come play for the Predators or the Tennessee Titans, and that's what Steven Stamkos did yesterday. I think that in and of itself is a huge deal, and you're talking about an all-time great player. Like he's one of the greatest shooters in the history of the game. By the time his career's over, he's going to end up with, I don't know, 650, 700 goals, somewhere in that neighborhood. He's at 555 right now. So we know he's playing for another 4 years. Could he end up with close to 700 goals? Like you're talking about an all-time great player at that point. So the Steven Stamkos being a Nashville Predator, what do you think that means for this market?
Well, you said it earlier. You said you received multiple texts from people who you would consider casual hockey fans that were excited about Steven Stamkos playing for the Predators.
Yep.
And the only thing that I can think of that could be comparable that I experienced is what happened when the Predators traded for PK Subban. I remember how much excitement there was for PK Subban to join the Predators. Now, Subban was still in the prime of his career at that point. But if I'm not mistaken, when the Predators announced that PK Subban was making his preseason Predators debut,
yep,
I think it was a sellout.
Yeah.
Like the Predators sold out a preseason game on the back of PK Subban. And I think that Stamkos occupies a similar position. He's been in the league for 16 years. And by the way, I know I made a complete fool of myself yesterday with my how many players have left their team after 16 seasons. I finally got the list from the NHL after the show. I believe Stamkos is the 19th player.
That's still not very many players,
no,
to your defense.
Yes, the 19th player in NHL history that they have in recorded history who played at least 16 seasons with one team before switching clubs. So, and many of the players on the list are either members of the Hockey Hall of Fame or soon to be members of the Hockey Hall of Fame. And I would include Steven Stamkos in that as well.
Yeah.
So I think the fact that now you have a player that most casual hockey fans know, Robby, you and I are around the game. Nick's around the game. We've been around the Predators. We know this stuff inside and out for the most part.
Yeah.
So we, like, when we talk about, the prospect of the Predators signing Chandler Stevenson, we can talk about Chandler Stevenson, but a lot of casual hockey fans might not know Chandler Stevenson. But, Steven Stamkos, if you watch hockey at all, you know who Steven Stamkos is. And I looked this up. Hopefully I'm remembering correctly. There has never been a 91 in Predators history. So there are going to be a lot of Stamkos jerseys that are sold. There are going to be a lot of people who are Steven Stamkos fans.
Yep.
I remember that was one thing about PK Subban.
They didn't really care about the team. It was him.
They were fans of PK Subban.
Right.
And by extension, they became Predators fans. There are probably people out there who are Steven Stamkos fans who will become fans of the Predators because Steven Stamkos plays for them.
I was talking with somebody yesterday that works inside the Predators organization. And they said to me, I knew Stamkos was popular. I didn't realize how popular until today. The guy he's a superstar. And you can make the argument, and I would be interested to hear people's thoughts on this, because I think there are a couple of guys that you can make a really compelling case for, including maybe one that's still playing, but you can make a really compelling case for. Like, is he the greatest player in terms of just career accomplishment? Is Steven Stamkos the greatest player that has ever played here?
Yes, I think so. In terms of Predators or all of sports or Titans,
You
too?
could go Predators and Titans, but Predators. I think it would be Peter Forsberg. Now, he only played here for 17 games, so you've got a cup of coffee here with the Preds. But you're talking Hall of Famer, two-time Cup winner. He had 885 points in 700 games. Now, injuries cut his career short. I think most people think Peter Forsberg played for like 1,300 games, and he didn't. He played 708. So, but he's a great player, obviously. Paul Kariya, great player. We talked about that yesterday. Shea Weber, now Hockey Hall of Famer. Roman Josi is a great player. But I think Steven Stamkos, just in terms of accomplishment, is the greatest player they've ever had.
I believe he's the only number 1 overall pick.
That is correct.
To play for the Predators. He's a 2-time Stanley Cup winner.
Yeah.
He was the captain of the Lightning for 10 years. He is a 2-time goal scoring champion.
Right.
He's been a postseason All-Star 2 times. He's probably been an in-season All-Star. He's been an in-season All-Star 7 times.
Right.
He's been a postseason All-Star 2 times, second team both times. Won the goal scoring trophy, the Rocket Richard Trophy, in 2010 and 2012.
Yeah.
It is hard to find another player with that pedigree who has donned a Predators jersey. Now, they've had good they've had good players. We just talked about Shea Weber going into the Hockey Hall of Fame. Shea Weber is a great player, but Shea Weber never won the Stanley Cup. Shea Weber never won a Norris Trophy, just when we would disagree with the fact that he never won a Norris Trophy.
Yep.
But Stamkos, to me, just based on his longevity, his ability to score, his team accomplishments, his individual accomplishments, I think it's hard to argue that Stamkos is the most decorated player to ever put on. He hasn't really put it on yet, but he will put on a Predators jersey.
I think the only other guy is Peter Forsberg. That's the only other guy. Like Kariya, Hall of Famer. Forsberg is the only other one that's 2-time Cup winner, Hall of Famer, and played at that high of a level. And Stamkos has done it for longer than Forsberg did it. But I think that's really the only other guy. Titans-wise, free agency, when you think about Titans stars all time, McNair, homegrown, Eddie George, homegrown, Chris Johnson, homegrown, Derrick Henry, homegrown. It's mainly draft picks. Free agent-wise, Delaney Walker was a great free agent signing. It had a couple of guys that were good free agent signings, but for the most part, they've all been homegrown. I think this is the best in terms of what they've accomplished in their career and the level that they're still playing at in their career. This is potentially the top. Now, Hopkins is a good player, obviously, for the Titans. Julio was a trade.
I would have thrown
Randy Moss
thrown Randy Moss in there, but
right.
he's
But
he barely played.
That's
there, right?
when it comes to that's why I did the playing at the level they're playing at right now, because Randy Moss caught a pass for the Titans, maybe.
But it's in the record book.
It's in the record book.
But
technically, Steven Stamkos hasn't done anything.
Yeah, but no, just based on what he has accomplished in his career, I have a hard time arguing against Steven Stamkos being the greatest player to be a part of this organization.
615-737-1025, our phone number. We'll take your thoughts on that. Preds fans, this is your day. Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, Brady Shea added to the group yesterday. We'll take your thoughts on that. What does it mean for this team? What does it mean for this franchise? 615-737-1025. Again, our text line down, so give us a call on our phone line today. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game. Final hour, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Adam Vingan, Nick Keyser here with you on this Tuesday morning. Steven Stamkos is a Nashville Predator. Jonathan Marchessault is a Nashville Predator. And Brady Shea is a Nashville Predator as well. They also re-signed Alex Carrier. Scott Wedgwood added to the group yesterday as backup goalie. A big day for Barry Trotz and the Predators on day one of free agency. Taking your thoughts on all that, 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025.
The Lightning, speaking of Steven Stamkos, have announced a 4-year, $32 million contract for Victor Hedman.
There you go.
So Victor Hedman gets the Steven Stamkos contract.
He
4
will probably
years,
be their next captain.
$8 million per season. Yes, I imagine Victor Hedman will succeed Steven Stamkos as Lightning captain. He was Lightning captain for 10 years. Do you know who the captain of the Lightning was before Steven Stamkos?
I'm trying to think of Stamkos. Was it Marty St. Louis?
It was Marty St. Louis.
There you go.
Before he was traded to the Rangers.
There you go.
Point,
Big Lightning expert over here.
point for Robbie.
Thank
Nick,
you.
minus 8 points.
Thank you. Let's go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in Brandy. Brandy, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Good morning, gentlemen. It is a beautiful morning in Smashville this morning.
It is.
For obvious reasons. So yesterday I was in training. It was the required teacher training for the summer. The one day I was in training and I had my phone open and I heard rumors all week that, we're in the race for Stamkos. And I'm thinking, yeah, sure, of course we are. And then he'll get stolen by somebody else. That's how it goes. So I'm in training and boom, Stamkos, boom, Marchessault, boom, Shea. And I'm trying my best not to completely freak out in front of a room full of people who have no idea why I'm freaking out. Trying to text my group, trying to learn and freak out at the same time. And I've never been more excited. I am pumped. I'm ready to go. Let's do this.
I think you speak for a lot of people, Brandy. Thanks for the call.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we were getting at with Stamkos specifically. Just, the career that he brings to Nashville after 16 seasons with the Tampa Bay Lightning as the face of that organization through most of that time.
Yep.
As the number one pick in the 2008 draft, if I have that right. And not to discount the other players. I mean, Jonathan Marchessault is an accomplished player. Marchessault was an original member of the Vegas Golden Knights. He played a pivotal role in hockey becoming what it has become in Las Vegas.
Yep.
Jonathan Marchessault represents the Golden Knights in a similar way that Steven Stamkos represented the Lightning.
Yep.
Marchessault is the franchise leader in basically every important category for the Vegas Golden Knights in terms of games played and goals and points and playoffs and all of that.
Really good player.
Marchessault is that player. Fans in Las Vegas today are upset about Marchessault leaving the same way that Lightning fans are upset about Steven Stamkos leaving. Now, Marchessault hasn't had the same career as Stamkos, but he held the same amount of importance to that franchise as Steven Stamkos did for the Lightning.
For sure.
So there is that. And Marchessault, again, just scored 40 goals for the first time, won the Conn Smythe Trophy last year. Really good player. Brady Shea, really good defenseman. Scott Wedgwood, good, solid backup goalie. He's been backing up Jake Ottinger for the past couple of years, has done a good job of it. It's that was a savvy signing. Didn't cost a lot of money compared to everybody else, but Scott Wedgwood is a really good backup goalie. So I get why Brandy's excited. I think a lot of Predators fans feel the same way as Brandy does. And you're texting your friends, you're calling your friends, you're excited about it. Now we have to see what it looks like on the ice. The problem is we won't see that for another 3 months.
Yeah.
So there'll be a lot of talking about it, but it's hard not to be excited about what the Predators have done. As you said earlier, Robbie, if you're a fan of this team and you've seen what Barry Trotz has done, not just yesterday, but over the past couple of seasons as the full-time GM, or this is really the beginning of his second season, really what he's done over the past couple of years as he's been back in the organization. The Predators have a general manager who is not going to sit on his hands.
Yeah.
And that is an important thing because oftentimes general managers do sit on their hands and claim that they can't make moves because it's too hard to trade a third line winger in the middle of the season because of the cap, because of the cap or what have you, or mess with the chemistry in the room or whatever. Like it's old hat. Barry Trotz has come in as a brand new GM, no previous managerial experience, and has made it clear that he's going to be aggressive. And if you're a fan of a team with a GM like that, you have to be happy.
Yeah, I mean, it's a. I said it yesterday, and I kind of reiterated it again this morning. It's a monumental day for the Predators franchise, regardless of where things go from here. Because look, let's be honest. I mean, now there is going to be some pressure to win, right? Like they've made some big financial decisions here. They have been really aggressive. And we talked about this earlier in the show. Like the moves that they have now made set up for a window to win now. Like you're trying to win a championship here in the next 2 or 3 years. And that is a dramatic departure from what we were talking about a year ago, right? Like, I mean, we were talking about youth movement and the roster and rebuilding and trying to get, back into competitiveness that way. And they have elected to take a different route here. They have leaned into kind of this veteran wave. And we can continue the argument as to whether or not that's the right move, but that's what they're doing. So there's a lot of pressure now to win and to win in the next couple of years here. But yesterday is a monumental day. I mean, yesterday the eyes of the hockey world were on Nashville, and you had elite players in Stamkos' case, Marchessault with 40 goals last year, choose to come to your team and play for your franchise. And a day like yesterday has never happened before. It's never happened before in the history of this team. And we'll see where it goes from here. Maybe the season comes around and Stamkos and Marchessault look old, right? Maybe they look old and it just doesn't work. Maybe they play great. Maybe this team is a whole lot of fun to watch next year. But yesterday it's kind of in some ways a groundbreaking day for the franchise. Like they had a couple of paths that they could have gone the last couple of years. And yesterday to me was kind of the culmination of the way Barry Trotz has been leaning. We talked about it with Saros. Like when you sign Saros to the contract extension, to me, that says you're in win now mode. Yesterday solidified it. Like yesterday, we no longer have to guess about what path they're taking. They're trying to win a championship here in the next couple of years.
Steven Stamkos, as you mentioned earlier, Robbie, Steven Stamkos knows what a championship winning franchise looks like.
Yep.
He was a part of it. How many cup finals did he
help build it?
4.
Yeah.
Went to 4 cup finals. Won twice.
Yep.
He helped build it. He knows what it takes to win a championship. And the fact that he said, and maybe it's just because they gave him a lot of money. But I trust Steven Stamkos that when he says that they checked off a lot of the boxes the Predators did in terms of what he was looking for an organization,
it's a big deal.
That should speak volumes. And there was a time not too long ago. Now, 10 years seems like a long time. A lot of things have changed in 10 years. I had hair 10 years ago. I actually still have hair. I just have less of it. I decided to shave my head.
Welcome back to the Fat and Bald Show.
Yeah. What are you saying? Who's the fat one?
I didn't say it.
Who's the fat one?
I didn't say
We're both bald-ish.
I know.
Okay, so I guess we're both fat and bald. Either way, the point is, 10 years ago, the Predators tried to trade for Jason Spezza.
Yep.
At the NHL draft, if I'm not mistaken.
It's funny you're bringing this up. Yep.
Spezza, at the time, was a really good player.
Yep.
In Ottawa, really productive player. And Spezza did not want to come to Nashville.
Oh, yeah.
He exercised his trade protection to say, I'm not going to Nashville.
Right.
I think what yesterday showed is that players are starting to see Nashville as a place they want to go. We talked about what Barry Trotz has done, and Steven Stamkos talked a lot about the fact that he was intrigued by how aggressive Barry Trotz has been. But it's not just that. And this is stuff that we who have lived here already know. It's a great place to raise a family. You get no state income tax. Now, the cost of living has grown exponentially, but people like being in Nashville. It's a place that people want to come. It's why the population has boomed in the past however many years. It's a place that players want to come to win. And that now I just think about what Barry Trotz said at this time last year. He doesn't want players to come to Nashville to retire. He wants them to come to Nashville to win. And when Steven Stamkos decides, I think I can win another Stanley Cup by playing for the Nashville Predators, that holds a significant amount of weight.
615-737-1025, our phone number. Give us your thoughts on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. More on a big day for the Nashville Predators yesterday in free agency coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game. Taking your thoughts on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Text line down, so give us a call, 615-737-1025, our phone number. We are live from our 1025 The Game studio, brought to you by Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Robby Stanley, Adam Vingan, Nick Keyser. Big day for the Nashville Predators. In some ways, a franchise-altering day for the Nashville Predators. Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, Brady Shea, the big three added by the Preds yesterday. So I saw, we talked about the power play unit earlier. I saw, I think the NHL flashed up a graphic yesterday. It was like, what do you think of the Nashville Predators core? Roman Josi, Philip Forsberg, Ryan O'Reilly, Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, Brady Shea, UC Saros. It's pretty good. It's a pretty good foundation right there.
Not bad.
It was I was it's funny. I was looking at that, and some of the comments underneath it were just like, "Let Barry Trotz cook. The Preds are cooking," and it reminded me of the Titans and everything going on with Rand Carthon this offseason. I mean, two pretty active off seasons by the Titans and the Preds, and we'll see how this goes. We went through the earlier in the show, like, are the Predators now a legitimate Stanley Cup contender? And I think when you look at the moves that they've made on paper, this is moves to win. This is moves to win now. And let's say Stamkos and Marchessault approach what they did last year. Maybe not exactly, but approach what they did last year. And that is, in Stamkos' case, right around 80 points, 40 goals. And in Marchessault's case, right around 70 points and 40 goals. What does that alone do for this team? A team that had 99 points last year, that had a 40-plus goal scorer, almost a 50-goal scorer in Philip Forsberg, a Norris Trophy runner-up in Roman Josi. If Stamkos and Marchessault next season, Adam, and forget the 5-year deal for Marchessault, forget 4 years for Stamkos. Next season, if they are close to what they were this past year, what does that do for this team? How does that? How much of a difference does that make in terms of how dangerous of a threat they are?
I just want to read this tweet we received from Dave. Trotz got one of the top free agents in O'Reilly last year and 3 of the top 10 this year. Instead of a jersey, I'm going to wear a suit to the game with Trotz on the back.
Well,
GM of the year.
I do think we've probably not discussed that enough today. Like, how much of this and closing these deals is the Barry Trotz factor and his ability to connect with these guys? Like, I wondered about that yesterday. Like, his ability to, and Brunette brought this up with Stillman. I mean, he said it. He's like, Barry closed the deal. Barry got in a room with these guys or on the phone with these guys and closed the deal. Like, how much does the Trotz factor into all this in terms of his persona, his background, all that? How much does that influence what we're seeing here?
I think one of the things that makes Barry Trotz, despite his inexperience as a general manager, someone who is well equipped for this job, is his experience as a coach, because he understands the delicate dynamics of a dressing room. He understands the type of players that need to be in there, how important chemistry is, all of those things. Some GMs don't have that experience or are far removed from, coaching experience. None of them have the coaching resume that Barry Trotz does, which is one of the best coaches who ever coached in the NHL. I think that aspect of his career has played a role in what he's been able to do as GM. But looking at what to get from what you can get out of, the players that they signed, specifically, let's talk about the forwards. So I said earlier that I think the floor, barring injury, for Stamkos and Marchessault combined in terms of total goals is 60 goals. I think it's a safe bet that you can count on at least 60 combined goals for both of them. I'm thinking around 30 apiece, maybe 25, 35, something like that. But I think that 60 goals is the floor, and that makes a huge difference. Like we talked about earlier, the Predators lost a playoff series in terms of aggregate score, 13-12.
Yep.
Like, if you give up 13 goals in 6 games in the playoffs, you should win that series. But they couldn't because they couldn't score. And now you have 2 players who can score. Now, there's the question about, the drop-off in the line mates that the 2 of them are going to play with. Again, if we assume that Marchessault and Stamkos are going to play with Tommy Novak as their center, if they're on the same line. Now, they're playing together, which is good, Marchessault and Stamkos in this scenario. But Stamkos isn't playing with Braden Point and Nikita Kucherov anymore. Marchessault is not playing with Jack Eichel anymore. Like that, the caliber of line mate they could have is going to decline a smidge. Again, they're going to play together. If they were to play together, that's still good line mates, but their center is not going to be on the same caliber. So how is that going to affect their production? But if they're on the top power play together, as we talked about, with Forsberg and Josi and O'Reilly, you should score a lot of goals that way. The thing about this team, I thought they were, in terms of generating offense in terms of, I like, expected goals may make people's eyes roll in the back into their back of their head. But I do think that's an important statistic, which is basically how many goals should the Predators have scored last season based on the quality of offense they're generating.
Yeah.
I think they were a top half of the league team last year. I'd have to go back and look
They were.
in terms of expected goals. The issue was they weren't as strong at actually putting the puck in the net. So if you combine a couple of players who are proven goal scorers with a team that was generating high quality offense, it seems like that should be a great match. But again, we have to actually see it in practice.
Yep. I mean, it's those two guys. And I think this is something that we hit on earlier. That's a really interesting factor in all this. Both Stamkos and Marchessault specifically kind of have that. They feel like, scorned ex-lovers in the back of that. Like Stamkos is clearly bothered by what went down in Tampa Bay, as he should be. Like Steven Stamkos clearly wanted to finish his career in Tampa Bay. And he talked about yesterday, the writing was on the wall last year when they didn't offer him an extension. Didn't even talk to him. Like clearly he's upset by the way this thing went down in Tampa Bay. And Marchessault went on TSN yesterday and was like, yeah, they didn't give me a decent offer. Now, the Golden Knights have disputed that. My guess is his definition of decent offer and the Golden Knights definition of decent offer are two very different things. But the point is, you got a mad Steven Stamkos and a mad Jonathan Marchessault heading into all this. That would seem to work out pretty well for you. Like at Barry Trotz, I would imagine, beyond just the fact that you got two really good players, is thinking, those two guys are motivated. And that could be a really, really dangerous thing for other teams if those two guys are playing that way and playing pissed off, for lack of a better term, all year.
And especially with Marchessault, because Marchessault is a fiery guy.
He's a fiery guy.
He's a fiery guy. Yeah. And I think, Stamkos certainly will be motivated, not discounting that. But I feel like Marchessault,
he's an emotional guy,
will be highly motivated by what happened. So, I mean, perhaps you get another 40-goal season out of Marchessault as a result of that. That's that's the hope, right? If you're a Predators fan. But Marchessault is an incredibly emotional player and plays well with that chip on his shoulder.
Yeah.
So,
no doubt about it. 615-737-1025, our phone number. 615-737-1025. More of your thoughts on Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, Brady Shea signing with the Nashville Predators yesterday. Are the Predators a Stanley Cup contender? What do you make of the signings? Let us know on our phone line. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Adam Vingan, Nick Keyser here with you on this Tuesday morning. Big day for the Nashville Predators yesterday. Taking your thoughts on that, 615-737-1025. Dr. Freedom on Twitter, Adam, is mad that we're talking a lot of hockey. I guess it's not Dr. Freedom, it's just D Freedom. So I guess I could read better. At D Freedom 15 on Twitter. This has been unbelievable programming, which I first thought was a compliment. It was exciting when the Predators lost the playoffs because I figured there'd be no more hockey talk. Last few days, all I hear is hockey. A segment or two is fine, but all day on programs is ridiculous. It's hockey, if you care. Isn't anything going on with the Titans? No, there's not. I'd rather hear your take on the Braves or the Grizzlies. At least it would be understandable. But you're constantly talking about a game that limited few care about it. Yeah, why would we talk about the Predators in this inning when we could talk about the Braves or the Grizzlies? You're right. Speaking of things that nobody cares about.
There's nothing of consequence going on in sports right now, especially locally, other than this.
Yeah.
The Titans are 3 weeks away from training
Titans are
camp.
on vacation.
The Titans are on vacation. People care. I mean, you heard Brandy's call at the top of the hour, how excited she was about what the Predators did yesterday. There's a lot to like about this. I think you're giving him too much credit by calling him a doctor. I know you made a mistake.
I did.
Yes. So
I like Dr. Freedom better anyway.
Yeah. Well, it is almost the 4th of July.
It is. Dr. Freedom. Let's go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in Adam in Portland. Adam, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Dude, do you remember post-COVID when we were watching Cornhole Championships on ESPN? Like, that was all that was on?
Oh, I remember.
Like, that, all right, so we could talk about the Predators, dude. He could shut his mouth. This is so much better than that. Yeah, so I heard you say something. They kind of triggered me a little bit, Robbie. You were like, these guys are going to have definitely a lull in side kicks because now they're playing with Tommy Novak. I think of it the exact opposite. I think of it now Tommy Novak's not playing with bums, man. He's playing with Hall of Famers. He's playing with good players. I wonder how good he could be. Like, and there's a couple of players on our roster, but he's the one who come to mind first of, like, how much better could he be as far, like, because as soon as he got the contract last year, we were all pretty excited about it. Like, he's a younger guy. He's shown a lot of potential, but now put him with players who are actually pretty solid around him. I just kind of wonder what he's going to look like.
Yeah, it's a really good question. Thanks for calling, Adam. Like,
I think it was me who said that, by the way, not you. I think I triggered Adam.
Yeah, he
was already triggered by me because I apparently left him on hold for 30 minutes last week. So I'm just taking Adam off left and right.
We're going to find out about Novak. Like, if things stay the way they are right now, like, he's probably going to end up being the one that plays with Stamkos and Marchessault. Again, I went through it earlier. They have more options. Like, they can play Stamkos at center. I don't know whether or not they're going to do it. They can play him at center. We'll see what happens. But yeah, like, Novak is going to have a big opportunity here. Novak, to me, the playoffs and just his total invisibility in the Vancouver series was very discouraging to me. Now, look, I said last season that I would not have signed him to a contract extension. I think ultimately you need to have better than Tommy Novak as your second line centerman. Now, the contract that they signed him to, the number's good. So I ended up having no problem with the contract. And it's not like he's a bad player, but we're going to find out whether or not he's a top 6 forward pretty quickly, because when you have Stamkos on your left and Marchessault on your right, you better be able to play and produce. And if you can't, then that's a big problem. And the Predators have to find somebody that can play with those guys, whether it's Novak or somebody else. Like, that to me is still, I look at this team on paper, and yes, you can be concerned about the age, and is Saros going to have a bounce back year after a down year for him? I mean, there's a lot of questions that we can come up with in terms of how good or not good this team is going to be. The biggest question is that, like, I feel good about O'Reilly at center. Sissons is a good player. I feel good about him in his role. I do not feel good about him playing top 6 minutes. But if Novak can't do it, where is that centerman coming from? Like, if Novak can't play with him, who's going to play with him?
And I understand Adam's point, because if Novak plays with two players the caliber of Stamkos and Marchessault, by extension, he should see an increase in production because he's playing with two players who are proven point producers, as opposed to last year where he was playing mostly with Mark Jankowski and Luke Evangelista. And I like Tommy Novak. I think he brings a lot to the table. But I, like you, Robbie, I think the word you used was appropriate. Discouraged. I thought Tommy Novak was a complete non-factor in the series against the Canucks. And by the end of that series, we were having conversations about whether or not they should take Tommy Novak out of the lineup.
Yeah.
Cody Glass was already out of the lineup. We were having conversations about whether the Predators should take out Tommy Novak. And that's not a good thing. So I think Tommy Novak enters training camp with a lot to prove just by bouncing back from a discouraging postseason, but also the possibility of playing with players the caliber of Stamkos and Marchessault, and maybe it works out. But I do get Adam's point. Like, you would hope that now that he's playing with more established players, that he'll be more productive, but it's up to him to get them the puck to score the goals.
Well, and again, like, Novak has been, I think, sheltered is a fair term to use, right? Like, they basically don't start Tommy Novak in the defensive zone, which is fine. You brought this up with Zegras, not to compare Novak and Zegras because they're not the same player. But not every player you have has to be able to play in all situations.
Correct.
It would be great if all of that could take place, but you don't have to have 18 skaters on your roster that can play in all situations. So, like, Novak not being very good in the defensive zone, you'd like to see him be better, but it's not the world's biggest deal that he's not great in the defensive zone. But, like, he's got to have a little bit more, I don't know if edge to him is the right word. It was pretty clear in the Vancouver series that it was too physical for him. Like, he just he couldn't break through. Like, he couldn't create any space for himself. He couldn't win enough puck battles, and he was totally invisible in that series. So is that an indictment on what he's going to be for the rest of his career? No, but it does make you wonder, can he handle full-time top 6 minutes with guys like Stamkos and Marchessault to his left and right? I think that's going to be a really interesting part of this. And if he can't, do the Predators have anybody else that they could put there that could thrive with those guys?
To your point, Tommy Novak started 47.5% of his shifts in the offensive zone at even strength.
That's a pretty high number.
That has to be one of the highest totals in the league.
Yeah.
Like, you are not putting Tommy Novak on the ice in this defensive situation.
Yeah, just not.
So, I mean, he's going to have to be able to do those sorts of things. But as I have said, if that's not the, a part of his game that's the strongest, that's okay. As long as he's making things happen on the other end of the ice in the offensive zone.
Right.
And we've seen him be able to do that, especially relative to his ice time.
Yeah.
Which is impressive. But you figure if he's playing second line with Stamkos and Marchessault, he's going to see more ice time. He's probably going to he might get fewer offensive zone starts. He's going to face tougher competition. Like, other teams are going to put their better players, their better checking lines, their better defensive pairs against him. There's a lot working against Tommy Novak. But if he is able to thrive in that situation, the Predator center situation doesn't look as dire, I guess.
Well, then one of the big questions out of all this is, what does this do for the power play? When you have Andrew Burnett coaching it, and you've brought in Steven Stamkos, who's one of the greatest power play weapons of all time. You've got Jonathan Marchessault that you could put on the power play. The Preds power play last year, if memory serves me correctly, was, I believe, dead in the middle of the league. 16th, I think they were 16th out of 32 teams, if memory serves me correctly. We know in the playoffs against Vancouver,
you are correct.
The power play was a problem.
16th at 21.6%.
Okay, so they're right in the middle. So what does having Stamkos and Marchessault specifically do for the power play? We went through the unit earlier. I would imagine, like, if I'm Andrew Burnett today, I'm already writing down the number one power play unit on paper and looking at it and saying, yeah, that's probably what I'm going with. And that's Ryan O'Reilly at net front, Stamkos in the left circle, Forsberg on the right side, Yossi up top, Marchessault at bumper. Like, those 5, O'Reilly, Stamkos, Marchessault, Forsberg, Yossi. I mean, that's got the makings of a heck of a power playing unit. You're talking about 340 goal scorers, a Norris Trophy candidate on the back, and Ryan O'Reilly, who was excellent at net front this year on the power play for the Predators anyway. Like, That's a heck of a unit that you got the chance to have there. And I would have to think if Andrew Brunette finds a way to get that unit specifically clicking, that's a top 10, maybe top 5 power play unit. And what sort of a difference would that make in terms of your bottom line wins and losses if you could cobble together a top 5 power play unit?
Yeah, and by the way, so the Lightning had the number 1 power play in the regular season.
Yeah.
And their top power play unit was Stamkos, Hedman, Kucherov, Point, and there was usually one player who rotated there. Nick Paul played there, Anthony Cirelli played there, so it rotated that 5th guy. But, the sound of that power play unit, it's hard not to get excited about. I mean, the Predators' top power play unit in terms of ice time last year was O'Reilly, Yossi, Forsberg, Nyquist, and Sissons. That was in terms of ice time on the power play.
Yeah.
That was your top unit. And, it finished middle of the pack as a team. So, the idea of having Stamkos as one-timer there. He scored 19 of his 40 goals on the power play. He scored 13 of his 19 power play goals off the one-timer. When I think about one-timers in the NHL, he's top 5. Ovechkin, Zibanejad, Draisaitl, Stamkos. Kucherov has a hell of a one-timer too.
Yep.
Like I'm thinking those 5. Like that's probably my top 5 in terms of being able to score off the one-timer. Austin Matthews.
Yep.
Like I'm thinking of that type of player. And Steven Stamkos has an absolute bomb from that left circle. There are going to be a lot of goals scored by Steven Stamkos from that spot on the ice.
Yep.
And that alone changes everything.
Well, an underrated part of him too is he's a heck of a playmaker. Like he can distribute the puck, which is also a big part of his game as well. But you're right. Like he's one of the greatest finishers of all time. Like he's got 555 goals. By the time he's done, he's going to be creeping towards 700 goals in his career. I mean, you're talking about one of the greatest shooters ever. Final thoughts on a big day in free agency for the Nashville Predators. We'll take your thoughts, 615-737-1025. What does yesterday mean for the Nashville Predators franchise? More on that next. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game.
Well, I hope to bring, what I've always brought, and that's, leadership, production on the ice. You know how hard it is to win and get it done. And I hope I can bring that to the locker room and just try to share from my past experiences. There's obviously some amazing leaders already on the team. So just collectively together, try to help each other out in that regard.
That was Nashville Predators forward Steven Stamkos yesterday at his introductory press conference via Zoom. So he's going to try to bring what he's always brought, Adam. Leadership, production on the ice. Big deal for the Nashville Predators. How do you put into scope what yesterday means for this franchise? The Stamkos part of it, we talked about it earlier. Could he be, in terms of just pure accomplishment, the greatest player that the Predators have ever had? Could he, in terms of just the interest around here, the ability to break through with your casual fan? Like I told you, I had a lot of people texting me yesterday that I would not say are big hockey fans. They're like, wow, Steven Stamkos on the Predators. There's that part of it. And then just on the ice with him, Marchessault, Brady Shea, Scott Wedgwood, the re-signing of Alex Carrier. How do you put into scope what yesterday means for the franchise and where this now takes them in terms of their status in the league and their pursuit of a championship?
Well, they're the belle of the ball now, just because of how much money they spent in free agency and who they acquired in free agency. There's going to be a lot of hype around the Predators entering the regular season. Once training camp rolls around in September, when people are making their Stanley Cup picks, I imagine the Predators are going to be a trendy pick to either win the Stanley Cup or be in the Stanley Cup final or challenge for, a Western Conference championship, just because of all of the firepower they added. But in terms of what this means for the team and the franchise in the city, earlier I compared it to when the Predators acquired PK Subban. It was a big deal when the Predators acquired PK Subban, and there was a lot more attention on the Predators because of PK Subban.
Yeah.
Now, Steven Stamkos does not have the same personality as PK Subban. Quite frankly, very few players in the NHL have the personality of PK Subban. But people became fans of this team because of PK Subban. As I said, there were a lot of Subban fans who, by extension, became Predators fans, and I could see that happening with Steven Stamkos. I could see some fans of Stamkos, the player, becoming fans of the Predators because of Steven Stamkos.
Yep.
And that's what, and I expect that. And we talk about the serial winners and the leadership that Stamkos just referenced in that clip. The Predators now have 4 players who have won the Stanley Cup at least once since 2019. Stamkos, Marchessault, O'Reilly, and Schenn. And Schenn and Stamkos won the Stanley Cup together.
Yep.
They have 2 players that have won the Conn Smythe Trophy since 2019, Ryan O'Reilly and Jonathan Marchessault. So they have proven winners. They have players who have done it in the playoffs, have reached the ultimate goal. And for the younger players on the team that are going to be on the team or around the team, it helps to have those types of players in the dressing room. But keep in mind, this was already on paper one of the oldest teams in the league before signing a 34-year-old, a 33-year-old, and a 30-year-old.
Yep.
I mean, the Predators are going to be one of the oldest teams in the NHL next season.
No doubt about it.
Which is why their window to win, you said 3 years. I came in this morning and I said 2 years. I think it's in that range, 2 to 3 years. If you want to win the Stanley Cup with an effective Stamkos, an effective Shea, an effective Marchessault, an effective Yossi, an effective Saros, an effective Forsberg, an effective O'Reilly, it has to happen within the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about it. And look, is that the right path? We've debated that for 2 years. There are still Predators fans that I heard from yesterday that are upset that the young players aren't getting more of a shot and that they haven't gone the rebuild route. And they may end up being right. I don't know. But regardless of how you feel about that, if you're a fan who enjoys watching hockey and the Nashville Predators, I don't know how yesterday couldn't be exciting to bring in a guy like Stamkos and then to add Marchessault and Shea to that. Like yesterday was a monumental day for the franchise. And I don't know how it's going to go from here. I don't know that the Predators are going to find themselves on a deep playoff run next season. I think they certainly have a better chance of doing that today than they did this time yesterday. I don't know that this is going to result in a Stanley Cup, but I do think Barry Trotz deserves credit for that they're going to be a part of that conversation this year. They're going to be a part of the contender conversation. People are going to be picking the Predators to make some noise this year. Somebody asked us earlier, is this enough to get the Predators in the top 3 in the Central Division? That to me should be the expectation. Like I don't know that they're going to win the division. I still think Dallas is probably a better team than they are, but you should be right there with Colorado, with Dallas, with Winnipeg in the division. And that should be the expectation of you competing for a division, a higher seed heading into the playoffs. Like the playoff part of this, you're a playoff team. So can you make some noise when you get there? It's a really groundbreaking, exciting day, I think, if you're a Nashville Predators fan. And we've gotten the buzz all show long. I think Predators fans are fired up. I think you should be fired up. And I'm really interested to see where this goes from here with the ingredients they now have.
So Justin Bourne of Sportsnet tweeted out a picture of the futures on whichever betting app he uses 1 week ago versus yesterday. The Predators were at plus 3,400 to win the Stanley Cup a week ago. According to Justin Bourne, they're now at plus 1,900. So they went from 3,400 to 1,900. It's a big jump. On his list, the only teams ahead are Florida, Dallas, New Jersey, Carolina, and Toronto.
Yep.
And we talked about they were 10th on FanDuel. So a significant jump. I mean, there's going to be a lot of hype around the Predators, and it's up to them to live up to it. But, it's for first day. It was the first day of free agency. Puck doesn't drop for 3+ months. If Predators fans want to be excited for the next 3+ months, they have every right to be.
They should be. And look, there's going to be a lot of hype heading into this season. And, there's been hype heading into Predator seasons before. Like, you brought up the Subban years. Obviously, the year after they went to the Cup final, there was a ton of hype heading into that year, and they largely lived up to it. I mean, they won the President's Trophy. They were in Game 7 in the second round. There have been some well-hyped Nashville Predators teams. This one's going to be up there. I mean, there's going to be a lot of expectations on this group. So can they find a way to meet those expectations? And are we going to look back at yesterday and say that was kind of the transformational piece to what ends up being a championship team? I don't know. I have no idea if that's what this is going to result in, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. We'll have more on the Predators and free agency tomorrow. Paul Kuharsky from paulkuharsky.com will join us in the 8 o'clock hour, get his thoughts on all this and the Tennessee Titans as well. That does it for us today. Chasing Big Joe coming up next. You're listening to 102.5, 106.3 The Game.